Hey everyone, happy Tuesday. We've got a great Tuesday report. It's good to be back home in Boca. You're watching Techstrong, gang. Hey everyone, happy Tuesday. I'm Alan Schimmel for Techstrong and welcome to Techstrong Gang. We have a nitty-gritty gang member group here today. In Boca Raton with me is our sustainability analyst and editor, Bonnie Schneider. Hi, Bonnie. Welcome. Great to have you here.
Thanks, Alan.
And then joining us, he's back. He was out with me in Salt Lake City. We're going to hear more about that in a minute. He is the founder of Tech Field Day and still runs Tech Field Day, part of Futurum Group. Stephen Foskett. Hey, Stephen, it's good to see you back home.
Yeah, it was nice to see you in Salt Lake City as well. I'm wondering, is Bonnie the nitty gritty one, or is that me?
It's all of that.
Well, one of you is nitty and one of you is gritty.
Oh man, I don't want to be gritty from the Philadelphia mascot. You know, I can't do that.
Well, yeah, being from Cleveland, I would imagine you'd have a problem with that.
Right, that is the mascot in Philly, right? I think so.
Yes, it is.
The creepy one? Yeah.
Yes. He's pretty creepy.
Yeah,
our camera crew is making all kinds of gestures that you're correct.
I can just imagine what gestures they're making. Yes.
No. All good. Look, it's all good. So we have a great couple of topics to cover today. We're going to kick off, as I mentioned, Stephen and I were out in Salt Lake City last week, and that was for the KubeCon Cloud Native Con. And while there, in conjunction with that, Stephen, you guys ran one of your Tech Field Days. This was App Dev Tech Field Day, but you've got a busy Tech Field Day calendar coming up, yes?
Oh yeah. We're not done for the year yet. So we've got actually tomorrow. We've got Mobility Field Day streaming on Techstrong TV.
Mm-hmm.
So tune in for that. We're going to have some reports from a couple of companies, Nile and Cisco, in the Wi-Fi and enterprise mobility space.
Very cool.
And then we're looking at, I'm not sure what all we're going to be doing at reInvent, but we're also planning our first 25 events, including another AI field day, which I'm looking forward to.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, so I had the chance to sit in a little bit in the app dev, or at least for one session. I had to go to the show floor and do videos, but it was a full couple days there for the Tech Field Day team. Why don't you, if you don't mind, share a little with the audience?
Yeah, sure. It was a lot of fun. First off, it was a lot of fun to have you and Mitch sit in for field day presentations, along with some other great friends of ours, and including some new friends. That was fun too. We've got some first-time delegates joining us around the table. Shout out to Mike Stanley and Benjit Young. I think that maybe they might be here on the gang at some point.
That'd be great.
And of course, so many great people. Man, the KubeCon, Cloud Native Con, it was there was a great showing there, a good attendance. About half the people I spoke with, this was their first ever event. And I think that reflects the changing nature of the event. Open source software, Kubernetes, cloud native software has become more mainstream, more enterprise, more corporate. And there were certainly a lot of those sorts of end users there, in addition to the usual crowd of developers and project staff. But yeah, we did Tech Field Day there. The CNCF graciously extended some space for us and some ability for us to do those. We heard from a company called Southworks that specializes in hybrid multi-cloud, which is a kind of a near and dear topic to my heart. In fact, I actually sat in for that one as a delegate, and I'll be writing an article about that, probably publishing today on LinkedIn, talking about the core question of cloud mobility. To me, when you look at the big at the cloud platforms, there's kind of two flavors, right? There's sort of the generic run anything here. It's a virtual machine or a physical machine, but run anything you want on it. It's all yours. Have fun. Go to it. And then there's the more value-added clouds like the big three, Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud. They specialize in advanced services. And my question for Southworks and my question for the industry really is given the fact that some of these big cloud providers offer advanced services and differentiated services, how can you really make multi-cloud applications that are valuable when moving them from, for example, AWS to Azure or vice versa? You're going to have to switch a lot of the core services, database services, firewall, even some of the elements of running the application itself. How do you make use of multi-cloud in that kind of scenario? And Southworks is planning on using CNCF tools, a lot of those projects that we saw at KubeCon, to make that happen. But I think a lot of companies are really faced with that core issue. So before I get on, what's your take on that question, Alan?
Yeah, look, I will tell you, I've been following the cloud space since there was a cloud space. And I always knew there would be hybrid cloud, right? You would have people in public hyperscale data centers and then private data centers. I never foresaw the multi-cloud. I thought people would make their bets. I'm an Amazon shop, I'm a Microsoft shop, I'm a Google shop, an Oracle shop, what have you. However, the way it's worked out is I do believe that multi-cloud wins the day a lot. And I think what it is yes, each of these hyperscalers have their own special sauce that they bring to the table, right? But that's at this higher level. Underneath that, I think it's sort of bits and bytes, right? What database you're running, is it on a serverless platform? Is Kubernetes? And especially when you start talking about microservices-based architectures, right? It's almost, that lends itself really well to pulling stuff from anywhere and everywhere. So while each of the cloud providers does have its own special sauce, I think underlying application infrastructure, there's just basic stuff that allows multi-cloud to become the dominant format going forward, right? I don't think anyone is going to put all their eggs in any one basket.
Yeah, I think that there's a deep desire, especially among enterprises, not to become too reliant on any of these companies, because then, man, you're really enthralled to that company. I mean, if AWS, look what happened with VMware, right? VMware became core to the enterprise data center, and then VMware got sold, and they changed the pricing structure, to put it gently. And a lot of enterprises are pretty upset about that. And I think that they're really shy of having that happen to them again. But at the same time, if all you're doing is using the lowest common denominator features, or using EC2 as a virtual machine in the cloud, you might as well use any other cloud provider. Oracle is going to be a lot more affordable to you, IBM and the rest of the companies out there, Akamai. Why bother using AWS at all? So I do wonder how this is going to work long term. Now, another company that we saw was Heroku, which is a Salesforce platform. And this is one of the original platform as a service companies. They specialize in a higher level application integration. For me, when talking to them, the big question for me was, how does this serve Salesforce companies, but how does it serve customers that are not Salesforce customers? In other words, is this just a Salesforce solution? The answer is absolutely not. They really are trying to emphasize the fact that it's kind of a tightrope walk for Heroku, because on the one hand, they want to say, look, we're the best for Salesforce customers and running, applications that are connected to Salesforce, that are powered by Salesforce, that leverage other Salesforce capabilities. But on the other hand, I think that they don't also want to say, and if you're not a big Salesforce user, then we don't want you as a customer, because of course it's a useful platform as well. We're also looking at them extending beyond their roots and embracing third parties, including AWS. That's, I think, to me, a real interesting takeaway from that. And also the fact that Heroku has, a decade of experience doing this stuff. PaaS seems like a new thing, but it's really not. And those of us who have been trying to build applications around Salesforce have faced the challenges and sort of realized the benefits of using platform as a service technologies that sort of smooth over a lot of those integration details.
Great. Look, it comes down to this. People will, and people are smart about this. Organizations are smart about this, I think. They'll use the right tool for the job.
Mhm.
And if it lends itself to doing it in a multi-cloud, I think that will be the preference, not to be locked in. But there'll be things where you don't have a choice, right? And and the other thing to remember is, look, the average organization has like what, 1,000 large organization, I mean, has 1,000 applications or something like that. Some will be multi-cloud, some will be just on a single cloud, some will be kept in a data center, some will stay on the mainframe. It's a mishmash out there. It's the way it's going to be. What do you think? Anything on that one?
Not on that one. I was just curious about the tech field days. That from the videos I've seen, it seems like the participation is growing, the interest is growing, and there's more diversity in types of the people that are attending. I was wondering, Stephen, if you can comment on that. That's just my observation from watching it for the past 6 months or so.
Yeah, well, we really are aggressively reaching out. And to that point, Bonnie, for example, at the media and analyst reception at KubeCon, I ran into Benji DeYoung, host of Kubernetes podcast, really hit it off with the guy, and I invited him to come sit in on a session to see what he thought of it. We are really understanding that we can't have this be sort of a quiet, private little club or something of people who attend Tech Field Day. We really want to embrace more diversity. We want to embrace more people with different perspectives. And that's really what we're all about. And so I'll just say, if you're listening to this, if you've got a blog or a podcast, or you make videos, or you're a user group member or whatever, hit me up, because I would love to invite you to a future Field Day event. They're a lot of fun, and it really is an open door. And, the other thing that's interesting for me too is kind of crossing the vendor and delegate divide. So the people around the table, we don't invite in people who work for any of the companies in this space, but of course people switch sides all the time. And so for the third company that we had presenting at Field Day, we had one of our favorite delegates, Mike Levan, was actually at the keyboard running the demo for Kodiak, because he got a job with a startup. And so it's a lot of fun to see that. We also had our friend Chris Williams, who works at HashiCorp, crossing the other way, because the companies didn't mind him sitting in as a delegate on some of these presentations. And so it's really neat to see how that works, because of course these folks have a different perspective after being in product marketing and product management for a tech company, then coming on the other side of the table and realizing it's awful hard to position a new tech product in an enterprise tech space. So, Kodiak is a great example of that, because this is a small company, a startup. They're attacking the complexities of platform engineering and infrastructure as code, and trying to figure out how to make all of this stuff easier. They're all practitioners. These are essentially people who were out there doing the work, and now they're trying to figure out a way to leverage that experience, leverage their own skills, and help people get up to speed faster, which is really a great idea. And it also demonstrates the fact that this divide between companies and practitioners isn't as hard as it looks. And in fact, we benefit when we can cross those streams a little bit and bring practitioner experience to the product vendor side.
Absolutely. Stephen, as you mentioned, tomorrow, Wednesday, is the next Tech Field Day was networking, I guess?
Yeah, it's mobility. This is our mobility field day. Yeah, which was originally wireless field day. And this is actually, I got to tell you, mobility field day is my favorite field day event. I know you're not supposed to have favorites, but I know you have favorite kids, right? I know we all do.
We're
right?
all special.
My kids know which one's my favorite. Well, mobility field day is the most fun, because it is like being on another planet, because they're all wireless nerds. They come in, they talk about private 5G, they talk about antennas, they talk about propagation, and the other thing that's crazy too, in the wireless and mobility side, a lot of what we take for granted was invented independently there. And so again, it is like a science fiction movie, where they go down to the planet and there's 6-legged reptile horses instead of 4-legged furry ones, because everybody's got to do the same things. And so zero touch provisioning, that originated in the mobility space. And a lot of the technologies that we're seeing in cloud and in data center are things, software-defined networking, things that mobility invented separately. And so you can learn a lot by kind of opening your eyes to a different area of technology and then kind of bringing that into your space. And that's why I've loved being part of mobility this whole time.
Love it. All right. If anybody wants to get more information on Tech Field Days in general, go to techfieldday.com and you can get the whole schedule of the events and find out a lot more on there. Stephen, it was a lot of fun. Let's take a break here on Techstrong Gang. We're going to come back and talk about, do you have what it takes to be a DevOps leader? You're watching Techstrong Gang.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
Hey everyone, we're back here on Techstrong Gang, and our next block talks about what it takes to be a DevOps leader. And this is coming out of a survey or report and survey that Mike Vizard wrote up over on DevOps.com. You can see the link to the article in the notes. The interesting takeaway, or one of the main takeaways from this analysis and report, was that DevOps engineers become leaders faster. Usually within 2 years, a DevOps engineer is becoming a leader. Now, what's the reason for that? There could be several reasons, and some of them not so obvious. But one of it may be that, I have two takes on it. First of all, when you're a DevOps engineer, almost by definition, you have skills in multiple areas, right? So you're that classic, you're not a T-shaped person, you're a broom-shaped person in terms of your skill set. And I think that makes you much more valuable as a leader within an organization because you have expertise that crosses over. So it's that multi-skill set. The second thing may very well be, though, that frankly, a lack of DevOps engineers, and we're dying for them out there. And so when we get one, we want to hold on to them and give them a promotion, and give them a career path. Stephen, I know you guys run in, you're talking to a lot of people with the field day events. What's your take?
Well, it's interesting, Alan. I think those two aspects that you just mentioned are exactly what came up in my mind when I was reading this article and this survey. As you said, just to kind of summarize, there's a lot of different people in DevOps, and some of the people that come in don't have the same background, and that's really great. And we've definitely seen that in the Tech Field Day space. I'm going to call out without fear of concern, because this is something that he owns really well. A recent field day delegate that we had, Kurt Kempel, who is one of the best, smartest, brightest people. Talk about having an unusual background, though. One of the things in his background is that he was a convict, and he picked up a lot of skills in prison. Wow. And now he is a tremendous DevOps leader and an inspiring person in AI, and basically a platform evangelist. And literally, he's the Slack platform evangelist. And he gave us. It's just like such an example of the fact that you don't necessarily have to come from one of the elite colleges and a computer science degree to be successful as a DevOps engineer. And again, if we look deeply in the article and in the survey, what we see is, although if you start with a degree, it gets you further along on your career path. Initially it does. But if you start without a degree, you can catch up. And that's what we see. I mean, I think that's what we saw at KubeCon. Incredibly diverse audience. I mean, historically at KubeCon, that's what I've been seeing. A wonderful group of people, many of whom came from just different backgrounds. I don't have a computer science degree. I don't know about you, but I think it is a welcoming space, and I love that about it.
I think that was also in this survey. What type of school did they go to? A top Ivy League or not? And there was fluctuation in terms of how does that affect their career path. And a lot of it found, even if, regardless of the school, and as you're saying, Stephen, regardless of even if they had a degree, that there were great prospects for career growth.
Right. Within 8 years, that whole thing goes away with 8 years of experience. It was interesting. There was an article, I don't remember if it was in the Washington Post or the New York Times, about has the Ivy League ruined America?
Yeah, well,
Right,
that was
Ivy
the front
League
page
schools.
This month on The Atlantic as well.
No, that's what it was, The Atlantic, excuse me. And, look, I'm not here knocking Ivy League schools. You want to go pay $100,000 a year for your education, God bless you. And they do turn out a high proportion of great people. But it takes a village. It takes a whole community. And there are plenty of, and especially that, I love this about the tech field. Love it about the tech field. More than in almost any other field that I've come across, it truly is a meritocracy. It doesn't really, it's easy for me as a white man to sit here and say this, but it's a lot more open, regardless of your sex, regardless of your race, certainly, regardless of your, we have I have Stephen, I'm sure you were at KubeCon, you saw transgender people. Look, it doesn't really make a difference how you dress, how you look, how you talk, what your preference is. It's can you code? Can you do the technology? Can you help build apps? Can you make them more secure?
Right.
And it's that meritocracy that I actually really, it's one of the big reasons why I love being part of this community. And it's certainly so in DevOps as well. Right?
That's great because it's encouraging for people that are considering a career to go to one that's welcoming like in that way.
Yeah. And listen, I don't want to be blowing, I don't want to be some unicorn crapping rainbows here. I'm not saying that there isn't prejudice. I'm not saying that, again, as a white male in my shoes, it's easy for me to say, oh, everything is kumbaya. Try being a woman or a black woman or a trans kind of person. And I'm sure they do run into some head currents. But I think when you look at tech versus other industries, we're a lot more, there's a lot more opportunity there based upon not who you are, but what you do. In terms of work. And that's a great thing. The other thing I'll mention, though, is that from a pay point of view, from a compensation point of view, it seems, at least initially, and maybe this is what you were getting at, Stephen, at least initially, the people with college degrees in this stuff are getting a higher pay rate. But again, that goes away too after a few years of experience. So, what does it take to be a DevOps leader? I think it just takes the will to go do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it takes being a leader. I will push back a little bit on what you're talking about the acceptance. I think in software developers, I think they're, the people themselves, I think there's a lot of acceptance and there's a lot of meritocracy and belief that, if you show your skills, if you show your qualities, you can move up. But I do want to caution that we've certainly seen a lot of misogyny, a lot of racism, a lot of challenges in this industry, especially on the business side and on the pay side, but and on the promotion side. I mean, if you look at who is successful in Silicon Valley companies as opposed to in software development, you'll see, well, a lot of male faces, not all white faces, but the non-white faces tend to be,
Southeast Asians, Indian folk.
Exactly. But even more to the point, as my Indian friends have informed me, they tend to be elites in their environment, their background, their schooling as well. So to us, we may, from America, white guy from America, I may see, oh, it's an Indian guy. But in their culture, there are different levels and castes as well, and they've said that is a big problem in tech. And of course, we certainly are seeing politically, a huge kind of white guy movement and so on. So I wouldn't say that it is all rainbows.
You want to get me started, Stephen?
But that being said, it is a phenomenally welcoming environment. In some fields, that's another thing we've seen with Tech Field Day, because we have different verticals. We've seen that some fields are more accepting than others. So, for example, my background in storage, storage is a white guy world. Sorry, I wish it wasn't. But, you look across the lines at data analytics, it's a much more diverse field, many more women in the database field. Security tends to attract lots of phenomenal and incredible and wonderful weirdos. And so I always love going to security conferences because it's just, wow, I love these people. And the same thing in software development. When you look at the DevOps leaders and so on, a lot of these new areas, AI has been more welcoming, I think, than traditional IT infrastructure. So I think it does, there is sort of nuance within that. And I think that that's a positive. And it shows that if you are, no matter who you are, if you're skilled, if you're energetic, if you want to make a contribution and you code, you can move forward in a way that many other parts of society would hold you back.
Yeah, I think that's also in recent years, with girls that are coding, girls who code, and then the organization I just met that does women in AI, that's growing a lot too. So if we pause this now and then look again in 5 years, we think it's going to be a different conversation. I think a lot more women are coming in, just slowly but surely, but it's definitely happening.
Look, as I said, is it perfect? No, far from perfect. But, in many ways, the one-eyed Jack is the king in the land of the blind. And there are many other industries, verticals, communities where they would view our progress here in tech as, they may not actually be fans of it. They may think that we are too many weirdos or too many,
well, those people need to meet more weirdos because the weirdos are what makes life fun.
Absolutely.
Sure, they are fun.
Absolutely. Anyway, it's a great article. It's up on devops.com. You can check it out. We're going to take a break and we're going to come back. Bonnie recently did an interview with a friend of mine, Jedediah Yu, founder of, he's founded many things, including software.com, but within the DevOps space, Delphix was his company. But we're going to take a break here on Techstrong Gang. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Techstrong Gang. Well, recently I had the opportunity to speak to a serial founder of IT companies and in the tech world. His name is Jedediah Yu, and you might know him as the founder of Delphix. He's also the founder of sustainableiT.org, Avamar, and now he's working on his most recent venture, which is software.com. Plus, he's also a best-selling author. His book is called Disrupt or Die. And if you're wondering, how does that relate to sustainability? I had the chance to speak to Jedediah, and he explained that as well as a topic we were just sort of visiting in our earlier block, leadership. So let's take a listen. I'm pleased to be joined by Jedediah Yue, who is a best-selling author of Disrupt or Die. He's also the founder of Avamar, Delphix, and SustainableIT.org, as well as Software.com. Jed, it's so great to have you on today.
Thank you, Bonnie. Great to join you.
In Disrupt or Die, you talk about the importance of change to stay competitive. Tell me a little bit more about that philosophy and also how it applies to sustainability in tech.
Yeah, it's definitely at odds with sustainability in many ways. If you think about sustainability, you have to think about sustainability of your business, and then also what your business and what the people in your organization do to drive sustainability for the planet. And the challenge with disruption is that it disrupts what is sustainable in any given business. You have to stay ahead of all the innovation potential within your industry and by your competitors. And so in order to be sustainable for your business and then be able to invest in sustainability for the planet, you have to master disruption and innovation.
When people are trying to innovate their companies and lean into AI, what do they need to be thinking about when it comes to sustainability and energy use?
Gen AI has an enormous cost to the planet. It is so expensive when it comes to compute and energy resources. And today we're in a phase where there's vast experimentation with Gen AI and different types of AI. All of that has really big implications for the planet. It's completely changed the curve on electricity consumption by technology, by the technology industry. It's gone from growing over the next decade a couple percentage points to more than 10% of the total for the planet. And you can really see how staggering the shift has been. Now, on the other side, it has incredible potential. It can really accelerate innovation and change the nature and the speed of innovation. And so my book, Disrupt or Die, is filled with frameworks that I have put in practice or that I've learned and put in practice from other entrepreneurs who built much bigger companies than mine. And so those are the frameworks that entrepreneurs use to ensure that the things they work on have high probability and high return. For instance, when you think about what happened with SaaS and all the enterprise applications that went into the cloud, and you start with Salesforce.com, and the fact that CRM had already been invented in the data center and just moved into the cloud. All of the new SaaS platforms that followed, those were sure bet.
Let's talk about leadership for sustainability. First, just generally, do you have any overall advice for tech leaders and maybe the ones that aren't a part of sustainable IT, that this is something new to them, they know they have to focus on? What's your overall advice for leadership and sustainability?
It's a great question. And I think for too long, sustainability has been somebody else's problem to solve. Maybe the CEO or chief sustainability officer's problem to go and solve and create a solution. But I think IT leaders are in the perfect place to take charge of their sustainability efforts. So in IT, they can not only look at the IT consumption of environmental resources, they can also look at the broader footprint of their entire company and then perhaps their entire industry. I think it's very important for leaders around the world to reprioritize sustainability and to look very carefully at what they're doing with Gen AI. The challenge with Gen AI is that it has a massive accelerant. It is a massive accelerant on innovation. So it not only changes the nature of what you can build in applications, because you can incorporate Gen AI and AI, ML, and other types of AI into your applications and programs. It also changes the rate of innovation. So if you look at Software.com, which measures the impact of Gen AI tools on developers, we're seeing that the average developer using Gen AI tools like GitHub Copilot are shipping new features 38% faster, 38% more features in terms of time to market than the baseline. That's like getting a 1.4x developer with a $19 a month solution. And so it radically accelerates potential for innovation at a very low cost, low dollar cost, but it does have a very big cost to the planet because these LLMs are hugely expensive on planetary resources. And the range of things it can do keeps growing as it moves into direct management of data against video and voice. All of these things will create more and more demand for CPU, not less. So there are areas where it will become more efficient and areas where it will become even more voracious in its appetite for energy and planetary resources.
Thank you so much. Jedediah Yue, author of Disrupt or Die and Software.com. Jedediah talked also about Gen AI and its immense energy use and where he sees nuclear coming in as an innovative disruptor as to be a source for that energy, and just the overall view that he has about how important sustainability is. That's why he co-founded Sustainable IT. It was really a pleasure to speak with him. This is someone, he said he's, quote, not working now, but I doubt that. I think he's going to come back and he's working on software.com, which he said he had picked up the domain years ago for that, which was a smart move. And now he's working on that. So it's kind of exciting to watch and learn more about where things got started and where they're headed now.
Excellent. I had met Jedediah, I think it was in Chicago at a DevOps event we were doing with the Jenkins community, and this was with Delphix. And he's a dynamic individual. He's a serial entrepreneur in every sense of the word, but also you know, he was out here preaching and starting up Sustainable IT before it was cool, and before he helped make that community come around it. So, you know, more power to him. More power to him. Stephen, I don't know if you've dealt with him at all or run across his.
Yeah, it's funny. Our backgrounds have kind of paralleled a little bit. I knew him at Avamar. I met him back then and at Delphix as well. You know, this is somebody who certainly has made a lot of contributions, and talk about diverse backgrounds too. He started as a high school teacher.
Yeah, isn't it interesting? High school English teacher.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
But, you know, I got to say, one of the things that really struck me from this conversation was his, and I don't know if this is exactly the point he was trying to make or just his worldview, but essentially that sustainability isn't just about green. It's not just about making sure that things use less power. Now, obviously, from the conversation, he's concerned about, you know, carbon emissions and power consumption and so on. But he talked a lot, especially in this interview, about other aspects of making IT, I don't know if sustainable is the right word for it, but essentially mature. You know, that we have to be looking at things in a mature way, in a way that allows these applications to continue to run for a long period, to be able to generate a positive benefit to the company that's creating them or society. And I think that that's a more expansive view of sustainability than a lot of people have. And really, you know, kind of a refreshing view as well. Did that stick out to you?
Yeah, and especially when he was talking about where does the IT team fit into the whole company, and he really is very certain on that they should be the leaders in sustainability, and that's what you saw with Sustainable IT, and that's what he reflected in the interview. And when I asked him also about AI, you know, one of the things when I covered NVIDIA about AI making the process more efficient, and that might be a way to save energy, he seemed a little reluctant to go with that as full force. He seemed to pull back and say the demand is going to be so overwhelming that we have to look more at the alternative energy sources. So it was an interesting conversation.
Yeah, one of the things he mentioned there was indeed that even if, as I have suggested on this show a few times now, even if we kind of shift gears into a new realm of inferencing and AI applications, that doesn't mean that these big training clusters, these big energy sinks are going anywhere. And I think that one of the things he pointed out in this was that those clusters will continue to use a meaningful percentage of the world's energy, even if we turn to things that run AI locally on our phones and on low-powered devices and so on. So, and the other thing that he pointed out, this makes a lot of sense to me, is as we kind of turn the corner on chat and generative AI and run it on low-powered processors, we're at the same time accelerating the development of applications, as he said, like video, that are just going to consume even more resources. So,
right, video and voice.
You know, I feel like, you know, maybe the environmental impact of AI is a little bit overblown, because I feel like we kind of have a spike of power consumption now. Maybe that's not going to continue. It sounds like he thinks that it's going to continue.
I think so too. I think that perspective that he has from his years of starting different companies, maybe he can see things a little further down the line. That's exactly the impression I got as well, that the demand is just beginning. And with these new things that are coming out with voice and video, this will grow even more, because the demand for all of that is just going to keep growing.
Could be, but more power to him.
Yeah, we're following it.
All right. I think that's going to wrap. Yeah, that's about it.
Right.
We're finished here for today's Techstrong Gang, Tuesday's Techstrong Gang. As Stephen mentioned, tomorrow we do have Mobility Tech Field Day on. Well, today even we have a whole lineup of our usual Techstrong TV material. And also, I don't know if it'll be for today, but this week we should start having our KubeCon videos that we streamed live while we were in Salt Lake City. We'll be playing here on Techstrong TV, and they'll all be available on there. So do check that out. Stephen, great seeing you. Good luck on field days this week. We'll speak to you soon.
Great to be here. Thanks. And I'm glad to be able to share those with the Techstrong audience.
Absolutely. Bonnie,
Yeah.
great to see you as always. Great. Most of all, great to see you watching this. We hope you enjoyed today's Techstrong Gang. Stay tuned for the rest of Techstrong TV today, everyone. But for now, this is Alan Schimmel, and we're out of here.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey, everyone. We're back here live at KubeCon in Salt Lake City. Cold Salt Lake City, I might add. But Salt Lake City, nevertheless, it's a great show. We've got a busy floor. You'll probably see stuff going by. Those are not props. They're real coming by our booth here on the floor. I'm really happy to introduce you to our next guest. If you watch Techstrong TV, you've seen him over the years. Unfortunately, I only get to see you at shows lately.
Yeah.
But he's my friend David DeSanto. David is Chief Product Officer at GitLab
Correct.
and has been for a number of years now. And beyond that, though, David's one of the genuinely nice guys in this industry. I love catching up with him. And he's never shy to give his opinion or tell us what's going on. David, welcome. It's great to have you, man.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you back here. The beard looks a little shorter.
It's a little shorter. I went to the
Little
barber on Saturday before he flew out. It was like way too long.
All right.
I had to look nice for our time together.
Absolutely. Well, you kind of look at the shirt David's wearing. He wore it because I usually wear the loud flower shirts,
Yeah.
and I went preppy today, and he went wild. So
Yeah. For everyone, like I actually packed this for this. I wanted to be somewhere
in there,
in Alan's galaxy of
yeah,
coolness.
had I known. But anyway, David, it's great to have you on. First of all, look, our audience knows GitLab, but let's talk about what's new with GitLab and maybe then we can focus in on some of the projects that are kind of near and dear to you.
Sounds great. Yeah. So for those who are not familiar, GitLab is a comprehensive DevSecOps platform. It means that we support everything from planning to coding to building, deploying, securing, all the way out to monitoring the applications deployed using GitLab. And for GitLab, we've been very much focused in a couple of areas as we continue to grow the platform. Obviously, AI is one of those, and we can talk about that a little bit, but we want to embed AI into that to help people deliver software more quickly, more securely, and so forth. We're focused on visibility as well right now, helping customers better understand their usage of GitLab, how the application services they're deploying with GitLab are being used, and helping them close that loop with real data. And of course, security and compliance, big thing for us. I joined GitLab in 2019, as you're aware. Let everyone know to add security and compliance to GitLab, and that's now ultimate, and it's the fastest growing part of GitLab.
Well, it's probably the fastest growing part of DevOps.
It is.
And just a quick plug. We launched a new site today, platformengineering.com.
Oh, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, we just launched today. There's stuff there. We took some stuff from DevOps as well. But security is equally as important there, as you know. David, the last time we spoke, I think it was probably RSA. Was RSA after Paris? Did I talk to you in Paris? Or
GitLab was not in Paris.
right, that's right. So it was RSA.
Yeah, it was weird. It was the first KubeCon, but we actually had our first company all in-person event since the
COVID.
pandemic. company was 300 people last time we did it. It was 2,200.
Wow.
And so we were all together for a week.
Good for you guys.
But it overlapped with KubeCon.
With KubeCon.
Yeah.
Okay. There's always another KubeCon.
And we're here for this one.
Exactly. But at RSA, we spoke about Duo.
We did.
Which at the time was kind of really, catching stride. First of all, assume people don't know Duo, maybe. Explain to them and then tell us where we are on that.
Yeah, so GitLab Duo is our suite of AI-powered features and workflows within GitLab. It's why we've now repositioned the company as an AI-powered DevSecOps platform. We truly have embedded AI into the foundations of the product. And so what that means for those who are not familiar with Duo or trying to understand what Duo does, it does everything from helping you with planning to coding to troubleshooting your CI/CD pipelines and helping you resolve security vulnerabilities. And so last time we got together, Duo Pro had just come out. That's been focused on developer efficiency. So it has the code suggestions, code completion, code generation in the IDE, chat, helping you understand the code, refactor the code, fix the code, generate test cases for it. And of course, GitLab has been known as a security company for the last several years. It comes with control so you can govern how AI is being used by your team. Since then, we actually launched Duo Enterprise. This is now focused on operational efficiency for the entire company. And so that includes helping you summarize conversations and planning, generate descriptions of what you want to work on, helping you get code review through it a lot more effectively with summarizing the code review, helping you fix issues as part of code review. And then the two that I am the most excited about, and we've seen a lot of adoption on, are our root cause analysis, helping you troubleshoot failed CI/CD pipelines. An example of that power, a customer shared that with Duo Enterprise, they had a failed pipeline over a weekend. They had a big push that was going out on Monday, but the maintainers were not available. It was very late in the day and developers had a failure in their pipeline. Duo helped them resolve it and get back on track, and they were able to ship the code on Monday as planned. The other one is vulnerability resolution. This allows developers to be able to click a button and have Duo resolve a vulnerability that's introduced. The reason why I'm so passionate about this, not only is my background security, but I truly believe developers don't wake up in the morning and say, I want to write a 0-day vulnerability in my application today, right? No, they want to write really good code. And so if you can help them do that, they learn from it. And so during their merge request, if our security scanners find a vulnerability, Duo can resolve that for them, explain to them what it did and why it was a vulnerability, and they learn to not do that again. And now they've resolved the vulnerability at the time of commit, and it doesn't hit the security team later on in the process.
Absolutely.
So very, very, very powerful. And that again is a customer in financial services told us that feature alone, and this is actually a really cool statement, has gotten their security teams and developer teams working closer together and not pointing at each other. We run an annual DevSecOps survey, and it's always been 60, 70% say it's the other team's fault, the vulnerability is there, and that's going down. It's because Duo is helping bridge that connection and the teams are working better together.
I love it. David, I've seen some studies. Actually, I think it was a GitLab study.
Yeah, we had our 8th annual, over 5,000 respondents again.
How much time do developers spend developing?
Yeah.
A minuscule amount of time. So I think it's important to adopt this approach that Duo's taken, which is it's not enough just to tell the developer, hey, there's a bug here or a vulnerability here, or this code's no good. That's great. That's a fine beginning, as they say in Las Vegas, right? But if you're not going to fix it, automate the fixing of it, you're making them more work, less time developing, more time doing this. And quite frankly, in today's day and age with agentic AI and generative AI and everything else, if you can't automate that, you really aren't helping the situation as much as you think.
No, absolutely. One stat that came out of that survey, which I think is what you're referring to, is there's a drop in developer responses and how much time they spend coding. So last year was 25%. This year it dropped to 21%.
Yes.
And that tells you a couple things. One's related to KubeCon. We're putting more and more on the development team. So they're now spending more time maintaining CI/CD, maintaining deployments and monitoring of those. And that's something that pulls away. I started my career as a developer. I know it's hard to believe, Alan, that I'm not like 25, but many years ago when I started developing,
25 to me.
I'll take it out. I'll take it. I started my career as a developer. If I was spending 21% of my time as a developer, I'd be frustrated too, right?
Yeah.
And so where Duo comes in is it's helping shift that paradigm. We talked about platform engineering right at the beginning. Platform engineering teams are usually like one platform engineer to like 100 developers.
Right.
Security is similar. And you're right. The best way to get the developers out of those other things and working on the most strategic work, which is their development work, you've got to empower the teams around them also with AI. That's why Duo is not just for developers, it's for everyone in the company so that everyone gets more efficient. Because you made your developers 100 times more efficient, things around them are going to break, right? And so that's what we've been focused on. Now, you mentioned agentic workflows, and one thing we announced at our GitLab 17 event. So for those who've not seen it, you can go and stream it. It's available online. We talked about where we're going over the next year, and one thing we announced at the end, it was kind of our and one more thing, was that we talked about the next phase of Duo. So AI today is very reactive. You got to go in, ask it a question in chat, click a button, and that works great for some use cases. But we don't see that as the future of AI. We see it as agentic, or we've been calling it AI agents.
Yep.
And that's where they can become more proactive and take decisions, make decisions on your behalf proactively. And a great example of this is you have a production incident and you know what line of code it is that caused it. Why couldn't an agent just quickly fix that line of code versus you having to go all the way back through the process into planning and pull it all the way back through? So we announced Duo Workflow as part of it. Today, it's still in a proof of concept stage. We only have it out with a handful of customers. But our goal is to get it to beta early next year and to GA by the middle of the year. And we're focused on initially helping with planning and software creation. And so what Duo Workflow is doing in its proof of concept is helping organize your backlog based off the most urgent things based on what's happening for the business. It's helping get through code review, serving as the code reviewer for the human, so that way you can actually have code review at any time of the day and get feedback based off company standards, as well as be able to fix the things in your code base or deliver new features that are the more low-hanging fruit, we'll call them operational improvements, and that developers spend a lot of time on instead of working on the strategic functionality. So Duo Workflow today has helped do, as an example, grab an item in the backlog that is a new feature but lower hanging fruit, be able to create that feature because Duo Workflow understands your entire code base, and GitLab as a platform also understands your CI/CD, your production, your planning, all the things around it, can create that feature based off the description and be able to submit that for code review. And so we actually did this with a recent feature. We wanted to improve how Duo is perceived for performance by the customer. What that means is it actually connected to the cloud infrastructure? Is the streaming working for chat and code generation? Is it able to connect to our backend security services to help you resolve vulnerabilities? And so we created a new widget in the product. Well, Duo grabbed that, wrote the code, including not just the software, but the docs update for the docs site, manuals that we create so developers come in and understand what the code's doing, and submitted that as a merge request that a human then reviewed and then merged and sent out to production. That would have been something we would have had a developer spend time on, but it's more important that they're building the more strategic things like helping reduce false positives and security, helping you get through planning more effectively. And so that's what we see as the future of AI. And
I mean, but just think, look, we're sitting here talking about this.
yeah,
15 years ago, 20 years ago, if you would have told someone they're going to have an agent that does that for them, they would have thought you were on drugs, honestly.
yeah, well, I'll even say just a couple of years ago.
I was being kind.
Yeah, so the way I look at it is like 2 years ago at KubeCon, I was asked the question, like, what is the next step? And I talked about Duo Enterprise. And like Duo Enterprise has become a thing. But the idea that large language models will be far enough along that they can have larger context, not just larger context. In the case of us, Duo is using multiple models, and Duo Workflow is actually using about 5 models to do what it's doing. But it can do that because there's enough knowledge now that we can actually share the information that it needs to know about your organization. And so what I would say is our goal is to have Duo Workflow be part of your team, just another team member there helping out.
A digital team member.
Yeah, we've been referring to it as your AI team member. And so we're really excited to bring that to beta, open it up to the broader GitLab community, and then bring it to general availability next year. But that's one of the things we're working on.
Right after January or later next year?
Mid-year next year is what we're targeting for it. Beta earlier next year, but we're on track. We announced the plan at that GitLab 17 event, which was beta by the end of our fiscal year. For those who are not aware, I don't know why you would be, but our fiscal year ends in January. So we're shooting to make it available to broader customers then, and then beta shortly after that in GA at the mid-year point. So maybe next year at this event, I'll be telling you about what it's doing as a GA product, but very excited about it.
Thinking RSA is the end of April, beginning of May.
Yeah.
That'd be a good time to talk about the launch.
Yeah, so I can tell you about some exciting stuff leading into that, because you're wanting to know.
Go ahead.
So GitLab, even though we talk about AI a lot, because it's what everyone talks about, KubeCon feels like an AI event now.
They all do.
But we're still focused on security and compliance. We shared at RSA that we had some acquisitions coming. We actually acquired Oxeye,
Yes.
leading
Remember.
solution for SAST, and Resilient, who led software bill of materials and SCA.
Very cool.
And so I'm very excited to share with everyone that the Oxeye technology is fully integrated into GitLab now. We launched our advanced SAST capabilities. So now we're able to validate whether it's a false positive,
Yep.
trace the code flow, so both the data control of it, but also the actual data flow of it. And that allows us to then also protect vulnerabilities that could be in the runtime. And so very powerful. And now we're working on that resilient technology. And so by RSA, we expect to have both those things fully integrated in and talking about what we're doing next around application security, risk posturing, and so forth. But very exciting acquisitions and available
Absolutely.
today and finished ahead of time.
Yeah.
We weren't going to have Oxeye integrated till about RSA. We finished several months early. So
It's
very
6
exciting.
months since RSA.
Yeah.
I'll just quick plug. We'll be doing the 10th annual our DevSecOps event at RSA this year at Moscone Center, and the theme is DevSecOps and AI in an AppSec
Yeah.
context. So in line as you would expect, and we'll be announcing call for speakers and
Yeah.
sponsors and stuff. You'll be able to not register for it at RSA. I forget what they call it. Put your intent down
Yeah.
as an RSA attendee to attend it. So yeah, looking forward. RSA is going to be here in about 5 months.
It's crazy, isn't it? Like I actually, as I was leaving for KubeCon, I realized the end of the year is only like 6-7 weeks away. It's kind of
You got reInvent. Are you doing reInvent? Or you're
GitLab
not?
will be at reInvent.
But you're not you.
I will not be there.
Good for you.
But our CMO will be there. About half of my leadership team. The leader that leads CI/CD will be there, and SaaS
we'll
platforms.
be there. So we'll
Dev and analytics, and
talk to the powers that be about
Yeah.
getting some GitLab folks over.
yeah, you should definitely do that because we will have some announcements there
As always.
related to reInvent.
Then you're into the first of the year, and then
Yeah.
whoosh, we're off.
And then it's hard to
Off
say.
and running, man.
But yeah, the last thing I want to touch on that we're working on that I think will be exciting for everyone, CI/CD is still the core of GitLab. So again, we talk about AI, we talk about security and compliance. And so we've actually now rolled out our CI/CD catalog. It's a capability in the product that is great for developers and for platform engineers, where you can define CI components and then share them in the organization. So now if you're a platform engineering team, you can have good templates that you want people to apply in their CI, so that way they can scale their environment, because your team is usually not as big as the development organization. What I'm excited about is that it's not just been companies adopting it, customers adopting it in their own organization. We open it to the broader GitLab community. And since its launch, we've had hundreds of contributions to the global CI/CD catalog that runs on GitLab.com that everyone can pull from. And this involves not just GitLab contributing, not just customers, but our partners like Google Cloud and AWS are contributing components that you can then easily adopt and deploy your software out into those hyperscalers where you run your code.
Sure.
And then also has now been broader community contributions as well. We've seen community groups like Linux Foundation also contributing to that. And so now we have hundreds of components that if you adopt, will work exactly as you want them to work. And that's just allowing people to scale their CI faster than they've been able to do before. And we're seeing people talk about where if they start a new project, it was months to get up and running and get stuff shipping. It then turned into weeks with things like cloud native and what's talked about at Kubernetes and KubeCon here. And now customers are talking about it being minutes or days from their idea to starting the project to building the CI and pushing the code out. And so a customer ally spoke at their actual event a couple of weeks ago, and they shared that with things like CI/CD catalog, our remote development capabilities, where you can just one click and have your developer environment, they're having developers contribute net new to a project, never seen the project, within minutes having their first commit to the project. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And that's the power of GitLab as a platform. So
Love it.
yeah, and lunch is open for everyone. So if you're
It's
here,
lunchtime here.
you
Go
should
to
go
lunch.
get lunch.
If you see David, say hello.
Yeah.
David, thanks so much, man.
Oh,
So
it's great seeing you. And I'll say, check out our predictions. They're going to be out
Oh,
soon.
we didn't hit that. Go ahead.
So just quickly for everyone, because I know we're at
No,
time.
we're on overtime. Go ahead, man.
For me, I'm seeing a couple of trends I thought would be interesting. Model ops, being able to version AI models and ship them in production. I see that becoming a core part of DevSecOps next year.
Really?
It's still a separate environment. You can do it both in GitLab, but all companies have to be an AI company now. So
Right.
I expect to see that next year. We'll be talking about how AI and model ops is just a part of DevSecOps and not a separate market. The other is the agentic workflows.
Gotcha.
I expect to see lots of agents.
A lot of agents.
Right.
And that's going to have its own headaches, I think.
Yeah, and then the last one is just the trend of what happens in cloud native. A lot of customers still today talk about their cloud native or their cloud focus, but they're still running some in data centers or running virtual machines. And the idea of development and production will truly be blurred the way that we've talked about at KubeCon for years. And so I do watch out for those trends and many more, but got a couple more that'll be out here shortly. And of course, our CMO and my leadership team will be as well. But check those out. And yeah, I wanted to share them because I think they're very topical.
You're the best, David.
Yeah.
David DeSanto, Chief Product Officer at GitLab here at KubeCon. As he said, I think they're going to serve lunch. I'm not.
Yeah, and check out our booth. It's here as well.
Absolutely. But if you can't, go to GitLab.com.
Yeah.
We're live at KubeCon. We'll be back. Stay tuned.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey, everyone. Good morning from frigid, well, maybe not frigid, but certainly cold Salt Lake City. We're here with our day 2 KubeCon coverage. We're right on the show floor. I hope you guys can appreciate this. A lot of people walking around. I think it's the CNCF folks said there's 9 or 10,000 people here for the Salt Lake City KubeCon. It's the biggest KubeCon since in North America anyway, since COVID. I believe the ones in Paris and Amsterdam before that were bigger. So it's interesting that KubeCon is actually bigger in Europe than it is in North America. Speaking of Europe KubeCon, they've also announced, obviously, that next spring's KubeCon Europe will be in London. And there will be one in Japan in 2025. And then Atlanta this time next year. So stuff to look forward to. We're going to do something a little different on our show here this morning on our live feed. Our next guest couldn't make it here in person, but nevertheless, they are a player in the cloud security and cloud native scene, and I wanted to bring them in for their view on things. I'd like to introduce you to Liat Hayun. Liat is, let me put on my glasses so I don't mess this up. Liat is the VP Product Management and Research for Cloud Security over at Tenable. First of all, Liat, thank you so much. I know it's evening in Tel Aviv, so thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. Always wonderful to have our friends from Tenable on. You know, my relationship with Tenable goes back to when Ron and Renaud originally founded Tenable. I guess that was around 2001, 2000, something like that. I had founded a security company and also vulnerability management, and I know Ron ever since. I'm actually still good friends with Ron and Cindy. So it's always good to hear from Tenable and what's going on. Liat, before we get into news from Tenable, and we're going to talk about some things, let's hear a little bit about you, if you wouldn't mind sharing. I gave them your title, but give us a little bit of your background, a little of your story.
Of course. So I'm actually quite new at Tenable myself. I've only been at Tenable for 5 months now. I joined Tenable through its recent acquisition of Eureka Security.
Sure.
I was the CEO, one of the co-founders for Eureka Security, where we focused on data security posture management and data security platforms as a whole. And then before founding Eureka and joining forces with Tenable, which was a 3-year journey that we can cover, we can spend a whole hour talking just about that. I spent about 6 years at Palo Alto Networks, also leading product management teams. So I've had my time in the cybersecurity industry, seeing it from all directions. And then before that, being from Israel, I spent about a decade in the Israeli cyber command in the IDF.
Got it.
So that's a bit of
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So, look, Tenable is much more than Nessus or vulnerability scanning today, right? It's really become a soup to nuts type of security operation. We'll get into it, but Eureka Security, which is a company you co-founded, acquired by Tenable, may be new to our audience. Why don't we, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about what Eureka did and how that has made its way into the Tenable product line.
So Eureka Security was a data security posture management platform, what we like to refer to as DSPM. DSPM actually means two different things in the industry these days. We acted as the first one, which is a standalone data security platform that allows organizations to see, classify, and protect their data across SaaS applications, cloud environments, data warehouses, and so on. But it also ties very strongly into the cloud, because a lot of the feature requests and the integrations that we received as Eureka back then is to help organizations not just see the data security posture, but to get that within the context of the applications and security tools they're already working with. So it's not surprising that CNAPP solutions, like the cloud security platform we have now at Tenable, want to have the data context when figuring out issues and exposures that you have in the cloud, right? If you have a vulnerability in a compute instance, like an EC2 instance in AWS, knowing whether or not that compute instance has a self-managed database on it with sensitive data changes significantly the prioritization or how fast you're going to handle that vulnerability. So that context became quite significant, and that's exactly how we fit into the CNAPP solution here at Tenable.
I love it. So look, CNAPP is obviously a pretty fast-growing space. The data security platform management is a maturing thing, but I'd like, look, we're here at KubeCon, right? There's, I don't know, almost 150 sponsors. I said about 10,000 people. Security's on top of everyone's mind, but when we look at cloud today, it's not just in the AWS data center or a Google or a Microsoft data center. It's on the edge. Some people are taking and building their cloud, private cloud, if you want to call it that, but they're, putting stuff back in the data center. And what people are looking for in security solutions today is not a separate solution for here and a separate solution for there. We want a solution, right? That transcends my infrastructure, wherever my data is. Talk to us about how data security posture management helps with that as well, because that's what people are asking for here, right? This multi-cloud type of approach.
Yeah, so there are a few layers to what you just described, because on one hand, and we are strong believers in that, there's a huge benefit for having a platform, right? When we talk about Tenable, when we talk about exposure, we want to help organizations identify true exposure across the environment. So if you have compensating mechanisms or specific choke points where exposure can be mitigated, we want to be able to identify the best, the most effective ways to approach that. That being said, you can't really do that if you don't have best of breed products that tell you about the issues, the findings, the exposures within their specific perimeter. And when we talk about exposure, it's the risk itself, but also what's at risk. It's the vulnerability, but what that vulnerability exposes behind it. So with our CNAPP, we're a best of breed cloud security product on its own, with the data security posture management capability within it, allowing us to assess the risk, to understand what the impact of an exposure might be. And that fits as a piece of the puzzle within our Tenable One platform that allows us to provide organizations with the ability to see overall risk, prioritize that risk given everything that I just talked about, and be able to act upon remediating or addressing that risk.
Love it. So Liat, it's the end of the year almost here, right? We're coming into November, December. Where do you see, as we look ahead to 2025, where do you see the risk in cloud security? Where do you see the new battlefront in cloud security, if you will?
So if let maybe start by providing some of my my perspective on cybersecurity in general.
Sure.
Cybersecurity is an extension of IT, right? We do not protect things just because we love it, even though we do love it. We protect the things that our customers, that our organizations actually need, whether if it's new applications that are using, new mechanisms, new use cases that they have. So even the evolution into cloud has been an extension of organizations moving to cloud and the need to protect that. The need for providing data context has followed up cloud because we now have stronger motivations for organizations to store more data in higher volumes, higher levels of sensitivity within cloud infrastructure. So that's an extension of that. So the easiest way to answer your question directly is to ask ourselves, what are organizations going to do in 2025 that we need to be able to help protect against, right? That we need to help them do, but do securely. And I think, the answer that probably is on everyone's minds as I'm talking is AI, right? We are really now at the phase where AI is almost every organization we talk to. When we ask them what do they do with AI today, their answer is we're testing it out, right? We're now trying to see what it will give us. 2024 was the year of experimentation around AI. 2025 is going to be the year where I believe most organizations are going to seriously adopt AI mechanisms to create AI pipelines within their cloud infrastructure to generate AI and Gen AI applications. So this is the next forefront, right? This is what we want to make. We want to help organizations make that transition and make it securely, and that's what we're focusing on to help them do that.
Got it. You mentioned AI. You can't do an interview without mentioning AI, right?
Yeah. That's what's in everyone's mind.
There's two sides, right? An AI is like a Gemini, right? There's always two sides to AI. There's the good and the bad, but that's how life is, right? I always like to say God never gives everything to everyone. There's always something. There's a price. But certainly, the promise of how it could help us here is huge, right? Do you think, in your perspective of security and for 2025, do you think you've given enough weight to what impact AI is going to have here? Or
I'm most certainly we did not, right? I think it's going to the impact is going to have is somewhat unexpected. So I think there's no real way of saying yes, we assessed it correctly. We are seeing AI impacting our organizations and our customers' lives in three ways, right? So the first one is how can they best leverage AI, or how can the tools they're using, like us, best leverage AI to help them, right? So being able to ask questions in a natural language based way, being able to provide remediation steps that are very contextual and very descriptive of what they need to do. So that's the first thing. The second thing is they are now starting to generate. AI has become, it's almost like almost like just saying we do code, right? Everyone will be doing AI soon. So how can we make sure they do it securely? And then the third aspect, and this is what we know today, right? There probably are more, is we know hackers and attackers also leverage AI. So how can we make our protections better to make sure that the techniques they're using, the speed of delivery of how fast they weaponize some of the exploits and mechanisms they find using AI, how can we make sure that we protect against that? And that's only things we've seen in the last year or so, right? It's still pretty new. I'm sure if we have this conversation again in a year, there'll be number 4, number 5, and maybe even number 6 to that list.
Excellent. Let's talk a little. As you said, what is it, about 5 months you're with Tenable now? I'm going to ask you to look into your crystal ball again, and the whole CNAP kind of offering. the platform security platform manager, digital security platform manager, DSPM. How do you see, how do you see that integrating into the greater Tenable One? I think is the name of the platform, right? Do you think that that's where it's at now is adequate, or what leverage and improvements do you think we can expect to see there?
Yeah, so I definitely don't think we're at the end of the journey. We're at the end of the road. Tenable's investment in cloud is only begun and is increasing with time. We very much believe this is a strategic area. So that's why you've seen only two acquisitions already in the last year or so, and a lot of investments also internally and organically. And then in parallel, we're seeing the same level of strategic focus and investments on the platform side, on Tenable One side. And the reason you're seeing both of these advance at the same time is because we believe the power, and each of them is a great product on its own, but the power really relies in the combination of these two components along with the foundational core product that Tenable already has today. So in today's world, for organizations to really be able to understand their exposure, having a strong basis, a strong foundation of understanding their vulnerabilities across their environment and building the cloud context on top of that is what we believe provides them the best understanding of exposure and risk across the environment.
Good, excellent. One last area I want to cover, if it's okay. So we are here at KubeCon, cloud native, Kubernetes, and all the things that go with that. What's specific to the cloud native stack, Kubernetes, microservices, containers, does DSPM, specifically help or, interact with?
Yeah. So maybe I'll start by saying that Kubernetes Security Posture Management, KSPM, I know we love acronyms here, is a foundational part of any great CNAPP solution, ours included. So being able to protect Kubernetes-based deployments, by the way, both in the cloud and on-prem, because we do believe that that is an extension of the cloud environment for many customers, is a foundational aspect in our CNAPP solution. The way to think about DSPM, the way that I like to think about the integration, how Eureka plus Tenable is a better together story, is that data exists everywhere, and having data context across the environment benefits any aspect of the cloud security solution. So if you're looking at KSPM, or if you're looking at runtime protection, or if you're looking at configuration management and CSPM type of capabilities, each and every one of these capabilities gets better if you know what data it has or what data it can access. That is also an important. So if you have a container that has access to an S3 bucket that has sensitive data in it, that is something you might want to manage differently. So it's really about the combination of those things together and the ability to identify what we call the toxic combinations around those things. So again, Kubernetes and KSPM is a foundational part of that. So it's really all about combining those things together.
Liat, I don't know if you could hear, they were making announcements. It's a little loud here. But listen, I want to thank you for joining us, taking time out of your evening to join us here live in Salt Lake City. Next time we'll do it in person, maybe RSA or something will be there, or reInvent. But thank you so much. And congratulations, by the way, on the acquisition of Eureka by Tenable. Keep up the great work, and we'll talk to you soon.
So much. Have a great conference.
All righty. Liat Hayun, VP Product Management and Research, Cloud Security at Tenable. We're live. We're at KubeCon. We'll be right back.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
Hello, and welcome to the Techstrong AI podcast. I'm Amanda Rosani, and with me today is Vinay Samuel. He is the CEO of Zataris. How are you doing?
I'm good, Amanda. How are you?
Doing well.
Actively on the show today.
Yes, happy to have you. Well, can you share a little bit about Zataris? What services do you provide?
Sure. Zataris is a new type of data platform, which basically, the fundamental capability is to automate information management. So where, clients are trying to bring together data from different aspects of their business, and usually they want to move it all into one big data lake or data store. And they have armies of people doing that. We automate that process. We make it much easier. We actually use AI to connect to data across the business and in the cloud, and then transform it so that it's in a business kind of language, if you like, and then present it to either AI or BI or reporting applications across the enterprise. So the main takeaway in terms of our capability is we bring down the amount of work effort, the amount of pain it takes to integrate data for business uses across the enterprise.
Great. Well, data is always at the root of many issues and company concerns, harnessing the data and storing it, getting the most out of it. So, what do you see as some of the biggest barriers or problems that companies have when it comes to this?
Yeah, sure. This whole thing that I'm about to say is exaggerated, I should say, by the whole AI movement, right? Where everyone wants to build an enterprise AI. Every CEO out there, every board is trying to create competitive advantage by deploying AI across their front end, their back end, across the entire operating layer. And the biggest barrier we're seeing is that clients haven't even resolved their data for reporting or BI, let alone be ready to be data-driven, AI-enabled companies. And so what that means is organizations are faced with, the speed of data that we've never seen before. So, data across the organization being created by apps, by every customer interaction that's happening, by their own channel partners. And so first it's the speed and the volume of the data, and then just the different shapes of data, the different types of data, whether it's videos, pictures, transaction data. The complexity in terms of the variation is huge. And what usually happens is clients look at that and say, well, let's just focus on one project to fix one use case. And if we fix that, then we'll get on to the next project. And the speed of that internal approach where you're trying to manually bring your data together using the old what's called ETL process, extract, translate, load it into a downstream database. That speed is slower than the amount of data that's being created and the speed at which new data is coming into the company. So we're seeing clients who are in a constant state of disarray, if you like. As they fix one data problem in one part of the company, there's a whole nother stack of new data sets or use cases that require a restart of the whole project. So data in different shapes, data in different speeds, messy data, and the slow process that we think is the state of the art at the moment in terms of integrating data. All of that is in my mind the biggest barrier to AI adoption and maturity in enterprises.
Yeah, absolutely. AI certainly does change things quite a bit. Everyone wants to implement AI, and there's so many use cases promised with AI. So, what solutions would you give to business leaders?
Yeah, so it's really exciting for us. We've actually built a platform that enables you to do the end-to-end process in the one platform, in the one pane of glass, if you like, right? What we enable is you can use the Zataris to connect to all your data and create a single view of your raw data layer, right? Once you do that, we use AI to transform it into a high quality business language based data view that then in turn can be deployed for many different uses. And one of the things we do within our platform is automate the deployment from the data layer into the AI framework. So some of your viewers may have heard of this RAG framework, this ability to actually intervene within the generative AI process, to intervene with your own private enterprise data. So what we've done is we've connected our data platform, we've connected that to a fully automated RAG capability to be able to, within one process or one set of pipelines, if you like, be able to go from your raw data that's at the source, transform it, deploy the RAG, deploy the AI avatars. So we actually have avatars that you can deploy. So that end-to-end capability, we're not seeing many competitors in the market, that ability to create the single view of data, ability to create a high quality data set, put governance around it, business policy in terms of how it gets used, and then moving that all into an AI framework that ultimately ends up in a chatbot or some kind of AI experience. One of our experiences is this avatar. To give you an example, we actually have an AI mortgage broker that's running within a large financial services organization. And that AI mortgage broker actually acts as an assistant to all of the human brokers and takes away all of the pain in terms of understanding the bank's policy, understanding all the different rules in terms of product and lending. We have an AI clinical assistant, which basically does triage, supports human nurses in terms of that triage moment, and taking away again some of the assessment need for lots of data. When you're making an assessment on someone who's got a cardiac issue, for instance, there's a ton of data behind that decision, including the patient's own data. We take away that admin pain, that knowledge requirement that's getting bigger and bigger using these AI agents. So it's really interesting. For me, I started a data management company, 10 years ago, a company to automate data management, take away all of the pain in terms of bringing data together in organizations. But where we've ended up is these avatars that are assisting humans in terms of AI capabilities, AI avatars that are doing role-based sort of assistance of humans. So we have risk managers, AI risk manager assistants. We've got AI property managers, AI network assurance managers that are all based on the client's data layer.
That's so amazing. So it's offering people the ability to make more informed, wiser decisions very quickly.
Absolutely, and beyond that, be able to move from just that chatbot kind of AI. Like, everyone wants to build a chatbot, but the real aspiration is, how do we move from chatbots to these assistants that are actually role based, that are a lot more mature. And to answer your question earlier, what do we offer clients in this space is not just, we've got a set of AI capabilities that we can bring. We actually have a workbench to build any kind of enterprise AI outcome. So usually what we do is we sit with the client's team and we work out what is the number one, number two, or number three AI capability that, if we could build it within 6 weeks, would revolutionize their company, change their business model. And that's fundamentally our promise. We say to clients, we'll do a Zetaris AI bootcamp. 6 weeks later, we'll give you a minimum viable product of an AI avatar or an AI outcome that could fundamentally change your business. So it's an exciting time for Zetaris and where technology has gone.
Yeah, no, that's something I hear a lot from different business leaders, that everyone's trying to harness AI and jump on the AI bandwagon. But sitting down and really brainstorming, where is there a real need? Where would the use case best be applied is important.
Yeah, no, totally. And I see that, that ideation thing happening every day in these boot camps that we're doing. We do like a 1-day boot camp or a 3-day boot camp, depending on whether the client has access to their data or not. So if we've got access to their data, it makes it better and faster and easier. But we can still do a 1-day boot camp. And in that boot camp, seriously, you know, that concept of there's no bad idea, you know, everyone comes to the table, people from the business side. Sometimes they bring in customers and clients and technologists. And I've seen it happen, you know, in front of my eyes where, you know, something that looks like just the most ridiculous idea actually ends up being the main game and is actually the revolutionary idea to change, you know, that business. In fact, this cardiac nurse project that we are doing, where what was an example of how in a boot camp, someone said, you know, the biggest problem we have is we treat every heart patient the same, and we treat the hypochondriacs exactly the same as, you know, someone who's actually having a heart attack. By the way, I'm a hypochondriac. Yeah, so we treat them all the same. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we could find a way to differentiate whether this person's having a panic attack or this person's having, you know, a genuine heart attack? And that whole, it was actually said as a joke, but it actually became the main thing that we focused on, and we ended up building a really valuable capability.
That's amazing. Okay, so once they get past the idea stage and they've implemented the AI, another concern I hear a lot is how to track return on investment. So what tips do you have there?
So that's a great question. So our whole model in terms of going from a boot camp to understanding the ROI to actually coming up with a minimum viable to test a thesis, that whole model has got to be financially based and value based. Because what I've seen is a lot of these AI projects, in fact, you know, the reference is Gartner. A lot of these projects are failing. 85% of AI projects are failing. And quite commonly, the ones that fail are the ones that are focusing on the technology. I mean, I'm a technologist. Some would say, what's he saying? But actually, my advice is to really understand the business side and understand where the money comes from. Like, and when I say understand where the money comes from, that's across every spectrum, whether it's a hospital or whether it's a bank. It's all about, you know, does this thing give back time? Because time actually equates, you know, as you know, equates to financial value. So this thing, does it give back time? Does it alleviate a specific problem that's driving cost? So don't forget the business fundamentals in terms of architecting these AI projects. It's very tempting to, you know, listen to your tech team who have come up with some great eye-catching AI capability, whether that's a bot or a talking head or some sort of digital human. It's very easy to fall in love with something that actually doesn't make any money, save money, or save time, you know? And so in our boot camp, it's bolted in. We have a part of the boot camp is an ROI modeling section where we really ask ourselves the hard questions. Are we enjoying ourselves with some technology, and are we getting the business to do something, you know, in inverted commas, something sexy, or are we focusing on something that's really going to turn the dial in terms of business value? And it's fundamentals. It's back to business fundamentals as opposed to playing with technology.
Well, AI is developing quite quickly. So if you look 2 years into the future, do you have some prediction for AI that you could share?
Well, you know, the first thing that comes to mind, there's a few things. One is we're seeing, you know, just about every day, 2 or 3 new LLMs or large language models that are being, or SLMs, small language models coming out. I think over the next 2 years, what we're going to see is organizations have a bit of a penny drop, that the idea of your business IP, your tacit, what's the word for it? You know, your that commercial knowledge you have that made your business is at risk, right? In playing with all of this stuff. And we've already seen some early court cases and challenges happening to do with LLMs, public LLMs being accused of taking private IP. So because of that, I think more and more organizations are going to say, we need to build our own language model capabilities. We need to keep AI close to the chest and within the company's fences. And we like that at Zetaris because everything we do is within the company's control and is inside the company's fence, and all of the IP belongs to the company in terms of the business IP. So over the next 2 years, I think we're going to be seeing a lot of small language models being developed by domain experts, by enterprises that are focusing on banking, telco, retail, who are experts in their domain, building out AI capability with the help of technology companies. Because I think the penny's going to drop that this is, potentially an existential threat to some industries, to some companies, if they let that IP bleed out of their business. So we're excited about it because we have a model for any organization without the technical expertise to build their own AI capability and own it. So that's one big thing. The other thing that doesn't worry me, but that excites me, is a whole new framework for AI away from large language models. I think a whole new set of capabilities we'll see in the next 2 years that will head a lot more towards this idea of general intelligence and true AI. In my mind, whilst it's really impressive and it's changing every industry, it's what we're seeing today is still a neural net technology that was discovered, tens of years ago. And it's just that we have the compute to leverage it properly and train massive models. I think with the speed of compute, even this whole idea of quantum computing coming to the front of the industry, I think there'll be a whole nother type of framework coming out that will shock us all again. And we, maybe not the next 2 years, but I think in the next 5 years, we'll see general intelligence come along. And then that'll be another big game changer, and we'll have to rethink what business is all about and how humanity copes with it.
It sure will. There will be a lot more to think about at that point.
Yeah.
Well, if there was one key takeaway you could leave our audience with today, what would that be?
I think that the big thing is your biggest barrier to competitive advantage in this new world of AI and becoming a data-driven company is your data layer. Your data layer is messy. I've never gone into a company bigger than a corner shop that hasn't got a data challenge. So your data is messy. Your data is in different shapes. That you've got different types of data. It's scattered all over your enterprise and outside your enterprise. The sooner you can find a way to automate getting your arms around it and getting a single view of that data and transforming it using automation and using AI to transform it, the quicker you will get to that competitive advantage set of use cases and capabilities. So the focus should be on not just let me find an army of people and bring them in and hopefully they'll fix it. The focus should be on what is the right platform and tooling. And let me tell you, Zetaris is not the only one. There's a whole new set of technologies in information management and a whole new set of data platforms beyond what we think is the standard, like Snowflake, Databricks, and Teradata, and Oracle, and all of that. They've all become, for me, they are legacy systems. There's a whole new wave of technology that automates information management, automates data layer development. Go and find them. Talk to us. We're one of them. And save yourself a lot of pain and accelerate yourself towards those high value capabilities and use cases.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming on our show and sharing all your insights today.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Really enjoyed it.
Me too. And thank you to our audience. Stay tuned. There's more.
Cloud Native Now is the web's leading resource for the growing cloud native ecosystem. CloudNativeNow.com is your destination for news, thought leadership, features, and webinars on cloud native architecture, Kubernetes, serverless, cloud native application development, microservices, service mesh, cloud-native security, and more. Stay on the cutting edge of modern application development at Cloud Native Now.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Techstrong Unplugged. I'm your host, Natan Solomon, and this is episode 31 of our series. In this episode, we're taking you to AI Dev Summit 2024. There, our co-host Cassandra Chin met up with Jeremy Morgan, and they discussed learning, people skills, and AI's creative edge. Jeremy is a senior training architect at CodeCloud, and he highlights his passion for upskilling developers. Stay tuned for practical advice and inspiring stories from a veteran educator in the tech world. Without further ado, let's head over to AI Dev Summit 2024.
Welcome back to Techstrong Unplugged. My name is Cassandra Chin, and today we're here with Jeremy Morgan.
Hi, everyone.
Can you introduce yourself?
I'm Jeremy Morgan. I'm a senior training architect for CodeCloud. We do kind of postgraduate, early and mid-career training for folks who are trying to develop in the cloud. We do a little bit of programming, but mostly we do Kubernetes-based DevOps type things in the cloud. So,
I would love to hear more about the upskilling and education.
Okay, yeah. So upskilling right now, I think is more important than ever because of the fact that things are moving so quickly. So, I started out about 24 years ago, and folks that are kind of my age like to talk about how hard it was back then, and how tough it was to do things because we didn't have Google and Stack Overflow and all these things. But I think it's actually a little more difficult now, today, for the young people because there are far more technologies and they iterate and move faster. There was a time when I was developing software where we were putting out software, say, every 6 months. And we would have big pizza parties and things like that. And the folks today that are coming into software engineering aren't going to have anything near a 6-month release cycle. I mean, hopefully, right? And what that translates to in a couple of different ways is, so if you're a person who's building software and you're working on software, that's a different flow and a different mindset. You're working harder, pushing harder. But at the same time, if you're trying to learn software that's out there in the industry, it's moving fast, it's iterating, they're deploying once a week, moving quick. So that's just one example of how things are a little bit trickier for folks these days.
So deploying faster is much harder?
Yeah. Deploying faster, I think, updates, there's this concept of who moved my cheese, right? So you're using a piece of software and all of a sudden it changes and it's really difficult to figure out, they call it moving the cheese, like a mouse in the cheese. That happens every day now, all the time. I mean, I'll log into interfaces of software that I use and it's just completely changed to different. And this is something that we didn't see, years ago that we're starting to see now. And usually it's for improvement, right? Usually it's for a good thing, but it can be challenging to folks that are trying to learn these new technologies, for sure. So,
are there any other points, or like you said, you do training?
Yeah. So most of my training is online training, where we record videos ahead of time, explaining concepts, and then we have labs that you can go in and build a lab. So, for instance, I just finished this course on Linux where I'll say, here's how to move files, here's how to delete things, and then here's a lab, go in there and log into a Linux machine and do it and check it. So it's that kind of asynchronous type education. We do a little bit of live classes, but I think the majority of it is kind of the learn on your own, a la carte at your own pace. If you want to learn Kubernetes, you just jump in and start taking a Kubernetes course.
Is there a lot of engagement with the students?
There is quite a bit. I've noticed that as time goes on more recently that people are more engaged, when we have a Discord set up and things like that, because they'll go in and kind of ask questions, and then sometimes other students come in and answer the questions before we even see it, and then they start talking back and forth, and so there's quite a bit of engagement. There's usually several different ways that they can contact the instructor, and they generally do, especially when we make a mistake. That's one of the best ways to hear from people, right? But
yeah, I think that's really interesting. Is this like a side thing, or do you do it full time?
Oh, this is my full-time job. And so I've been doing it for around 6 years. And I was an engineering practitioner before, like a software engineer, DevOps engineer, architect, things like that.
Do you build the courses yourself?
For the most part, I like to say that we all build them because basically I will come through and build out an outline of what I want to talk about. People will kind of go through it. Then I'll cobble up some slides that are they're okay. They get the point across. And then these folks on my team will take these slides, make them beautiful. Other people will come and give me feedback and say, this is what we should focus on. So it really is a team effort.
Yeah, it's a big collaborative work.
Yeah. Yep.
What kind of content have you built, like maybe your favorite that you've built?
I think one of my favorite courses I built was probably the one on the Go standard library for the Go programming language. And one of the reasons I think it was really fun was some of the feedback that I got where people were just saying, they were really enjoying how I kind of just made it as simple as possible and showed all these little tricks. And most of those tricks came from developing a lot of Go software before that and like falling on my face with certain things. And so I tried to include a lot of that in the course. Like, here's how I screwed up. Please don't screw up this. Try this method. And so I got a lot of good feedback. And that was probably one of my favorite courses because at that time, it was like there wasn't anybody who had a course on that particular subject anyway. And so people really enjoyed my style of kind of like, I call myself the world's okayest developer on Twitter and LinkedIn and stuff, because that's kind of my style is like, I'm not standing up on the stage because I'm some programming god telling everybody how to do things. It's more like, here's all the ways I screwed up. Here's the things I learned from it. And I want to pass it on to you. And it's fun. It's fun for me anyway. It's kind of my life's goal is to just help people and teach them. So
I think that's really nice. And do you think you teach like any programming languages, or are you more about like concepts?
Right now I'm doing a lot more infrastructure type things. Like I worked on the Linux thing and I'm working on some Azure DevOps things, but I have done programming courses in the past on Python and Golang and a little bit of JavaScript. So
is there anything else you want to talk about?
I guess what is the audience for this? Who's going to be watching this?
Just consider me the audience.
You're the audience? Okay, so I'll tell you. One of the best things, the best career advice I like to give to new folks is to be a fearless learner. This is one of the things where I say, don't be afraid to learn it. If a human being created this thing, then a human being can understand it. So even like, we're here at an AI conference, right? So even I thought, like, I can't learn AI. I'm not that great at math. I'm too dumb for this. And I should have known better because I've been telling people for 20 years to not think that way, right? And so then I started to dive into it and jump into it and realize, oh yeah, I can do AI stuff. I can learn this stuff. And so I always try to tell young people, like, be a fearless learner. Don't be afraid to try to learn it, because if you do it in small chunks, eventually you're going to look back and be like, I don't know what I was afraid of. And constant learning is going to be the one thing that puts you ahead. And then the second thing that I was talking with your dad about, the biggest thing that will put you ahead is by working on your people skills and being a good person to work with. So when you're working on a team, if you have somebody who's just this, wild genius who knows everything about technology, but they're horrible to work with and people don't want to work with them, they're going to add less value to the team and their career isn't going to go as well as somebody who maybe doesn't have as many technical skills as this other person, but they're good to work with, they're pleasant, they know they can be approached. And so kind of work on your people skills, work on getting along with people, work on conflict resolution just as much as you would work on, algorithm optimization. It's because it is
practice people skills.
Just in the workplace, basically. I think it's probably the only place you could practice people skills. I read a book when I was about 13 years old that I still go back to. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. The title sounds cheesy. It sounds like a cheesy sales book, right? But
yeah.
But it actually does have a lot of good principles in it. It was written in 1937, and it has principles. So I'll go back to those principles and sometimes ask myself, am I interacting with people according to this principle? Where like people like to be heard, they don't like to be talked over or whatever. And you can kind of practice that and just kind of evaluate or ask people who are close to you. Am I do I seem like a jerk this week? You know, and they're like, oh yeah, kind of, you know.
Maybe that's the best way. Just ask people directly.
Maybe. I mean, you can always find people that can be honest with you. You know, I have my wife and my children who will tell me immediately whether I'm doing something terrible. So sometimes it does help to ask, I think. So.
Have you been to many conferences like this before?
Yeah, a lot of conferences. So I've been to ones that are smaller ones like this. I actually prefer smaller ones like this. And I've been to large ones like AWS with 60,000 people all over the place. And generally when I go to conferences, I do a lot of presenting. At this conference, I'm just here to hang out, pretty much. Hang out and learn and see what I can figure out.
Practice your people skills?
Yeah, practice my people skills a little bit. I'm generally very quiet and introspective, so I'm trying to get out and more. I just saw your dad and I recognized him, so I'm like, hey.
Yeah.
And then the conversation, you know, that's how it goes, I guess. So.
Is there anything else interesting you want to talk about, or?
I don't know. AI. What is the most interesting thing you think? The most interesting way that people are using AI right now?
That's actually a good question. I mean, the most common way is ChatGPT, but for actual interesting ways, I don't think I've done my research.
Yeah. Do you know anyone in school that's using it for their homework?
Yeah, it's common.
I figured. I thought I'd ask. I have a daughter who's a sophomore also who says the same thing. It's like very common and it's kind of scary, but I think one of the most interesting ways that it's being used is kind of amplifying people's creativity. So like helping to outline things or helping with poetry, something like that. I think it's disingenuous to like go in and say, write me a poem and then present it and say, this is my poem. But if you could have it say, like, say you're a poet, you say, evaluate my poem, tell me what's, you know, what are the slow parts, what's bad about this, and have it spit back. I think that's a really interesting way that it kind of enhances creativity.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, it's kind of, you have to first create something and then kind of have AI help you.
Yeah. So.
I think we've had a really good chat today.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Hello, everyone. I'm Keith Kirkpatrick, Research Director with the Futurum Group, and I'd like to welcome you to Enterprising Insights. It's our weekly podcast that explores the latest developments in the enterprise software market and the technologies that underpin these platforms, applications, and tools. So this week, I'd like to talk about several enterprise application vendors that recently released their quarterly earnings over the past couple of weeks and provide my take on how their results are reflective of some of the larger trends in the marketplace. Then, as always, I'm going to move to my rant or rave segment, where I pick one item in the market and I either criticize it or I champion it. So, without further delay, let's get into this topic of the week. It's earnings season for several enterprise application vendors. So, first company I want to talk to you a little bit about is OpenText. Now, OpenText is an information management software vendor. They actually recently released their fourth quarter fiscal 2024 and full year results. Now, they actually, their results actually fell short of analysts' consensus expectations. Their company's total quarterly revenue came in at about $1.36 billion, falling slightly below the consensus estimate of $1.37 billion. Earnings per share came in at 91 cents, missing the forecast by the forecast is $1.05 per share. So what's going on here with OpenText? Well, there's a couple things going on with this company. First is, of course, they actually have just completed in that quarter the divestiture of AMC. This is a company that they had acquired and then they decided that they no longer wanted it. So, of course, they completed a divestiture in May 2024, this quarter. Now, the second thing that's going on is they were undergoing a massive restructuring. So what does that mean? Well, in layman's terms, it means they're going to lay off a lot of people. I believe the number is around 1,200 people. And then they were going to actually hire back 800 employees. But the idea was that they were going to lay off folks that were doing jobs that really were not as higher skilled or did not have the skill sets that matched what they really need, which are people with AI skills. So as a result, they're taking a lot of charges there to complete those layoffs, in terms of either buyouts or attrition, what have you. Basically, they're taking charges there. And that is one of the main reasons why they actually, missed on their EPS number. Now, that being said, it's not all bad news for the company for several reasons. Number one, the company actually announced a number of key customer wins during the quarter. They had deals with the California Department of Employment Development, Export Development, Bank of Egypt, let's see here, GS1 Australia, Johnson & Johnson, Nestle, and Taboola, among many others. So that was actually a really good sign that they were able to go out and still actually, get some deals done. If you think about what OpenText is doing, they, like a lot of other companies, are actually really working on deploying AI throughout their organization, throughout their software packages, largely around what is known as their Aviator products. So they're actually incorporating AI into those, which are designed to really help streamline workflows, make it easier for employees and others to work with the data and actually conduct various tasks, that sort of thing. So I think the real takeaway here is OpenText, like many, many other companies, they're going through some growing pains in terms of trying to adjust the way they do business. And by that, I'm talking about incorporating AI. They are trying to really kind of deploy AI throughout their application portfolio to make it easier for companies or for their customers to really leverage the benefits there. So I think that, in terms of what's going on here, putting aside any external factors, I think the company itself is exhibiting what we might expect to see, where they're really trying to figure out a way to structure the company in such a way that they're able to deliver AI and making sure they have the right skills in place with their own employees to deliver that to their customers. So that is OpenText. Now, I'd like to move to another company. The next company is Twilio. Now, they actually are an interesting company because they're largely they have really kind of a couple of key segments. One is their communications business, so things like, delivering messages through things like SMS. As one of the big part of their business is their communications business. And then, of course, the other one is their CDP segment, which is called Segment. And what they've been doing there is they've really been trying to incorporate Segment throughout the rest of their business. And why is that? Because as a CDP, that is where they hold all of this company data that really is important in making sure that when you're deploying artificial intelligence or trying to deliver messaging through text and that sort of thing, that it's relevant and timely. That is the real value that company has in terms of delivering strong customer engagement. So now this company, Twilio, reported Q2 2024 results. They actually posted revenue for the quarter of 1.08 billion, which was good for about a 4% year-over-year increase. In addition, their non-GAAP income from operations, that actually reached 175 million, up from 120.1 million a year ago. So it's a pretty solid number there. They actually helped or actually raised their full year guidance to 675 million, up from 650 million. So what's going on with Twilio? Well, they are really trying to differentiate themselves in the market because of the fact they have so much data, both their data that they hold within their Segment CDP product, as well as all this data that they have that's been generated from their communications business. So we're talking about interactions that span voice, SMS messaging, email, and other sort of communication modalities, including things like mobile applications, that sort of thing. So they're really trying to integrate AI across all of those channels to make it easier to engage with customers, make things more relevant and timely. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on with Microsoft. So Microsoft, they reported their fourth quarter fiscal 2024 earnings as well. And they actually reported a 15% increase from the same quarter the previous year. Their revenue for the quarter was $64.7 billion, and their earnings per share number hit $2.95 a share, which was slightly higher than the consensus estimate of about $2.90. Now, for the full year, Microsoft reported total revenue of $245.1 billion, which was good for a 16% year-over-year increase. And if you think about what Microsoft is doing, is they are all in on AI. They're really, leaning into their partnership with OpenAI and integrating AI across all of its products through Copilot within the Office applications as well as in Teams, and even, of course, within their Azure business, which is part of their Intelligent Cloud segment. Now, one of the challenges, of course, is that if you dig a little bit deeper into their numbers, their overall cloud revenue came in pretty strongly at $36.8 billion, which met analysts' expectations. But if you look at what's going on in terms of their intelligent cloud revenue, which includes Azure services, it actually fell short of expectations a little bit. Their revenue reached $28.5 billion versus expectations of $28.7 billion. So what's going on there is obviously they're facing a lot of competition from other cloud providers, AWS, Google Cloud. And of course, if you think about what's going on, you look at external factors in terms of spending. You have a high inflationary period right now. You have uncertainty in the market. I'm recording this today on the 5th of August, and obviously we've seen a very, very strong pullback in terms of equities in the market. We'll see what happens over the next several days, if the Fed decides to cut rates in response and whatnot. But clearly, it's a cautionary environment. One of the other things that is important to note is that Microsoft has been investing so heavily. I think their CFO noted on their earnings call that they spent $13 billion on CapEx, up from $12 billion the prior quarter, noting that most of that spending is going toward AI. So it's really creating a challenge for Microsoft in terms of making sure that they're actually able to derive some revenue from all the spending that they are doing around AI. Now, I certainly believe that companies need to continue to invest. If you think of where we're going, AI is not sort of this nice feature to have. It eventually is going to become table stakes for any kind of application. We're going to get to the point where it's not going to be thinking about it as a separate thing necessarily like Copilot, but it's just going to be embedded throughout the application in almost like you're not even going to know it. I mean, that's down the road, but ultimately the point here is that Microsoft is spending heavily, and they realize they need to in order to keep pace with some of the other companies in the market. And I think we're going to see that continue, not just with them, but others as well. Now, shifting gears a little bit to another one of the large SaaS players that reported earnings, ServiceNow. Now, they actually had a very, very good second quarter of 2024. They have really, if you look again at what they've done, they've been really leaning heavily into generative AI in terms of deploying it across entire workflows. And their generative AI play is really, it's called Now Assist, and the idea is that it's using AI in very, very specific use cases and workflows that are designed to improve efficiency, enable access to information in a much more seamless way, and of course, remove a lot of the friction involved with doing repetitive tasks. So if we look at what they've done, the really interesting number for ServiceNow is that the introduction of these generative AI capabilities within Now Assist, it's actually doubled the company's net new annual contract value quarter over quarter. So what we're talking about here is 11 deals greater than $1 million in net new in annual contract value in the second quarter alone. That's really, really impressive. That's showing that companies are actually starting to buy based on the promise of the incorporation of AI within software. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out long term in terms of, again, being able to promise AI as a real differentiator, and seeing where that leads eventually. Where, as I said, I believe we're going to get to the point where generative AI is just going to be sort of par for the course. Now, of course, the devil is in the details. How well do your models work? Which use cases are you actually trying to implement? And then, of course, what it really comes down to is the data that a particular company has, and how well do they actually execute on linking the model to the right data sets and making sure that there are guardrails in place so it doesn't hallucinate, all of that kind of stuff. But I think the ServiceNow earnings demonstrate that the message is getting through to customers or potential customers that generative AI can deliver value, and it's what they're looking for in terms of their large SaaS platforms. I'd also like to talk about Google or Alphabet, which is the parent company. They announced the second quarter results, 14% year-over-year growth to reach $84.7 billion in revenue. They were particularly strong in search and cloud, and I believe the Google Cloud segment surpassed $10 billion in quarterly revenue for the first time and achieved $1 billion in operating profit. Now, of course, if we think about what's going on here with Google and AI, all of that kind of stuff, it really is all about leveraging generative AI or AI in general to improve the services that they have. Obviously, AI is being used to improve search. It's being used to improve advertising, obviously, which falls into that search category, to make search more effective, more relevant, more timely. It obviously impacts the quality of ad placement algorithms. So it's clear that it is being used on that front. It's also being used, to deliver other services within Alphabet's portfolio. Certainly using AI to make it easier to use their productivity packages, being used within their meat product. All of these things, all these algorithms and refinement of these algorithms is done to improve engagement, which of course increases the amount of activity and usage of the product, which is what everyone wants. So it's clear that it has been a force for driving revenue, even if organizations themselves haven't fully realized all of these benefits just yet. They're certainly banking on it and certainly are choosing the products that they believe have the capability to deliver AI and its benefits over time. It might not be right away, but they certainly are banking on the fact that these large platforms are able to do that. Now, part of it, of course, is if you think about a Google or a Microsoft or a ServiceNow or whomever, part of what you're buying is the fact that they are so large, they are going to have that momentum. So as investments are made in the technology, if they don't work as they should, they're going to be able to refine that over time. And of course, by having such a large base, they're obviously collecting a lot of data that is being used to refine those processes to help make those algorithms work more effectively. So I think that's kind of the key takeaway here is when we think about earnings and everything like that and how AI plays into it, it's really about, again, I see it as customers out there are realizing that AI is not going away. They want their platform to be moving ahead, incorporating new features, incorporating new functionality. They, again, may not be necessarily generating a lot of ROI yet, because you might be still in pilot, you might be in sort of a more limited deployment, but they certainly are reaching out and looking to these large players to provide them with these tools to get them on the road to really recognizing some sort of ROI down the line. So with that, I want to move to another topic, and this is my rant or rave segment, which I do every week. I actually have a rave this week. So I want to talk about Atlassian, which just announced a little bit of news through a letter. It was actually a shareholder letter that they released, and basically what they've said is that they've obviously have a stated goal of moving all their customers to the cloud. Why? Because obviously it's more profitable for vendors to deliver services in the cloud. It's easier to do updates, easier to do maintenance, all of that kind of stuff. We certainly know all the reasons for that. But the interesting thing is that they've kind of acknowledged that this cloud-first approach that they had used with smaller customers, that's great, and that seemed to work pretty well. But for larger customers, that wasn't necessarily realistic for these large on-prem customers that had a much more complex or integrated instances of their software. So what they've done is they said they have shifted their mindset from being cloud first to what they say is enterprise first. And what does that entail? Well, that means that they will be working with their customers to move to the cloud over a multi-year period instead of sort of a quick lift and shift. And some of them may actually want to using a hybrid approach of having some resources on-prem and some in the cloud. And the idea is that they want to be able to provide their customers with the option to kind of do this over time. And to me, that's really two things. One, it is more realistic in terms of large enterprises that just the level of complexity and expense to do a complete lift and shift in one motion just may not be realistic. And the other thing it does is it shows that they're being very customer centric in terms of acknowledging the challenges that their customers have, and are basically readjusting their messaging to support their customers, which I think is it's a novel approach, and I think it's one that should be applauded in the market, given that a move to the cloud is not simple. It's not just like flipping a switch for a large organization. So for this, I would like to give that a rave. All right. Well, with that, I want to just say thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Enterprising Insights. I'll be back again soon with another episode focused on the happenings within the enterprise application market. So be sure to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on your preferred platform, and I'll see you next time.
Despite the hype about modern applications, the mainframe remains central to enterprise IT and is rapidly adopting new technologies. This episode of the Tech Field Day podcast features Stephen Dickens, Jeffrey Decker, and John Hildebrand talking to me about the modern mainframe prior to the Share conference in Kansas City, which we'll be attending next week. Welcome to the Tech Field Day podcast, where we bring together a group of IT technical experts to discuss a single idea about key concepts in the industry. This podcast features a variety of perspectives from members of the Tech Field Day delegate community and is often recorded in association with one of our events. Tech Field Day is part of the Futurum Group, and this podcast is also published on our sister company, Techstrong. On this episode, recorded before the Share Kansas City conference, Our premise is the enduring popularity, strength, and value of the mainframe. Despite what you may have heard, the mainframe keeps on chugging and is probably the most important element of global commerce. Before we get going, though, let's meet who's on the panel today.
Hey, Stephen. My name's Stephen Dickens. I'm from the Futurum Group. I'm a chief technology advisor and also lead our research efforts around the mainframe space.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Decker. I'm an instructor in mainframe curriculum at Northern Illinois University.
And I'm John Hildebrand. Currently in between jobs and unemployed, but happy to be there at the Share conference here in Kansas City, being that I'm one of the local delegates.
Yeah, John's been to many of our Tech Field Day events before and represents the new world. I think, John, to start off, I think your experience at Share is going to be a lot like mine was when I attended Share earlier this year. Walking around on the show floor, looking at the booths, looking at the topics on the agenda, listening to the keynotes, it really sounded a lot like the kind of things that we would hear from any other event that we would be attending. I mean, apart from the names and the specific technologies involved, most of the conversation at Share was very, very familiar to new media folks. Stephen, I'm going to throw this to you first. What are the key topics in the mainframe industry today?
Well, I mean, obviously this is a transactional system that provides the backbone. You mentioned it in your introductory comments, the backdrop to the entire sort of industry. We're talking systems that sit behind, credit card processing at the back of airlines, government departments, tax offices, doing that transactional heavy lifting. So there's obviously that piece. I think the big themes that are coming through is operational resilience. We're recording this after the CrowdStrike and Microsoft US Central outages that happened last week. A lot of the mainframe community, I saw the flicker go over Jeff's face there. There's a lot of sort of operational resilience. But you mentioned other sort of new topics like DevOps. We're starting to see the mainframe space adopt that, and it'd be crucial to application development. Security is always top of mind for these guys. But increasingly, AI, we're seeing that come into some of the tools. We're seeing that come into infuse from a coding perspective. Big announcements from the likes of BMC and IBM and Broadcom in that space over the last few weeks around what they're doing with AI to infuse their tools. So largely what you'd expect if you were talking about a cloud platform or an on-premises platform, same things are top of mind: operational resilience, cybersecurity, DevOps, and AI.
And Jeff, you're teaching the next generation of mainframe operators and programmers. I imagine that these are the topics that you're teaching, right?
Well, in the two classes that I'm able to teach at Northern Illinois, just a little background, NIU, the Department of Computer Science, is legendary in the mainframe world, but unfortunately, over the last 10, 15 years, the department did its best, or has done its best, to try to close out the mainframe curriculum. But I think that's kind of stopped for now, thankfully, because of the dire need companies have for mainframe developers. And so I try to teach everything that I can in two 16-week classes. And I'm finding that assembler and the basics of mainframe assembler, it's 370 assembler that I teach beginning, and also the smorgasbord sort of mainframe topics that I teach in my upper level class, like JCL and COBOL and assembler QSAM, other advanced assembler. Those are really necessary. I wish that I could get into other subjects like Stephen mentioned, but unfortunately not with the time limits that I have here. My ultimate idea or ultimate wish would be to have a second upper level course to teach, but the department won't give that to me at this point. So I'm glad to help all I can.
Well, hopefully, Jeff, somebody in the administration watches this episode and realizes how cool the mainframe is.
Yes. Well, you wouldn't believe the type of recruiting I've tried to get so that Companies that are interested in my graduates will write letters to state senators, to the governor, to the university administration, and to our department chair, asking for this course, these mainframe courses, to be expanded, to be kept going. And I think it's worked, at least so far. One of the things, though, is that next week at Share, Dr. Cameron Say and I will be presenting on education in mainframe curriculum. I think that's going to be Thursday morning, if I'm right. Share has been incredible. Share has been incredible. I've only attended this, I think will be my fourth or fifth time there. And it's just a great group of people doing a lot of good work. That's all there is to it.
Well, thank you. And it's really great to have you. And it's great to have so many of the incredible thought leaders from the SHARE conference joining us around the table next week for the Tech Field Day presentations. Yeah, and SHARE is the longest running technology conference in IT, which is phenomenal. John, you've been to most technology conferences with me, I think. I know you haven't been to SHARE yet, but the things that I'm saying, what does that make you think? And what's your initial gut reaction when hearing about things like AI and DevOps and containerized applications on the mainframe?
Well, obviously, the first thing that comes to mind is when I think the mainframe, I think of something dark and dusty in the back corner of my data center. It's still chugging away, but I underappreciate to some degree what the level of just transactional stuff that it does for the business overall. Since I've been focused mostly around, say, like DevOps and cloud and things like that, it's interesting to see that these things are intersecting now. It used to be that you would think of ways to get out of mainframe, or you would add another layer on top for an application that somehow would access information to it. But now we're going to see vendors who are trying to put mainframes latency wise nearby to cloud workloads. We're going to be seeing, to some degree, like you mentioned, AI being involved in some capacity with mainframe technologies. These are when I was considering the Venn diagram of overlapping, these weren't necessarily two things that I was necessarily putting together in an overlap sense. But it is exciting to see that this technology that is old to some degree is now new again, as mentioned. Plenty of businesses are needing these sorts of folks to be able to work with the mainframe systems that they currently have. And I think even in a past technology conference, Stephen, you and I discussed that the salaries for some of the folks like COBOL programmers and things like that, as the age issue starts to become an even more prevalent issue inside of that particular industry. It's definitely something that new graduates should definitely look into as far as need and want inside of the IT industry.
A conversation over the dinner table with one of my daughters. They brought one of their friends around who was doing comp sci and is due to graduate next year. And his comment to, well, where would you spend your time? Where would you go and try and find the highest paid job? I said, well, you're probably going to think game developer, or you're going to think Java programmer. But I said, let me give you something that will blow your mind. You come out of college with a COBOL centricity. You're a COBOL programmer. You're going to work for Citibank, Wells Fargo, Walmart. You're going to work for some of the biggest names in the industry, and they're going to pay you, if not six figures, very close to it, straight out of college. And his mind was blown. And because literally I've seen it, the feeding frenzy that goes on. And Jeff, you've got a perspective here, no doubt. The feeding frenzy that goes on for these big name sort of companies, if they can find a recent graduate who wants to join the mainframe team. You're working for some of the biggest companies with blue chip names, great benefits packages, and they're paying you a crazy salary just because you want to learn COBOL versus Java. At the end of the day, the job of a programmer is to write in a language. The actual job is the same. You're sitting there at a screen. You're sitting in Citibank or Wells Fargo's nice plush offices. You're sitting writing code every day. The actual job is the same, or you're writing in Java or writing in COBOL. The way I look at it is, if I told you you could speak French and earn 150K a year, or you spoke Spanish and earn 70K a year, which language would you learn? It's the same principle. So, I mean, it's a job to get people to talk about skills, and we're doing some work at Share, and we've just done some recent research on it. But, for any of these graduates who pick up the show across any of the social platforms, learn COBOL would be my advice.
And the funny thing is, I was actually surprised by the diversity of people at Share as well. It is not just, a bunch of old dinosaurs. It looks a lot like the same kind of people that you might encounter at a biotech conference, or, pretty much any mainstream corporate kind of conference. And the people that are coming out of a lot of these degree programs, you mentioned Cameron, you mentioned, Jeff, your program as well. The people that are coming out of these degree programs, they're fun. They're good people. They're good to be around, right, Jeff?
Yes, they are. And one of the things I try very hard is with these usually young students that I have that have no idea about mainframe, is I try to tell them that, yes, you may be interested in doing things that are not assembler, not COBOL, not mainframe oriented, but it will at least get your foot in the door of any major corporation, because any major corporation has a mainframe. And if they have a mainframe, they're doing everything. They're doing web development, they're doing Android, iOS, they're doing UI development, you name it. And so if they get their foot in the door making really good money, and they don't like COBOL, or they don't like assembler, whatever they're doing, there's always the opportunity to move elsewhere within the company and do something that they would consider, and I put air quotes on this, more elegant than COBOL or assembler. To me, there's nothing better. But you just have to get their interest in it, and they really pick it up.
Yeah, I mean, the point for me is, if there's a job opening for a Java developer or a Python developer, there's going to be 1,000 candidates for it. So rising to the top of that list of 1,000 candidates is really hard. If there's a COBOL developer job, there'll be tens of candidates for that job. Rising to the top of 50 versus 2,000 candidates, I know where I'd back my chances.
It's an interesting point, because my own kid recently graduated with a computer science degree, and has focused on the hot technologies, data science, artificial intelligence, user experience, user interface design, that sort of thing. Now, there are plenty of jobs in that field.
Oh yeah,
and that's been their experience as well. But that being said, it is hard to rise above the crowd, because there's also plenty of graduates in those fields. And, knowing Rust and Python and Ruby and, these are great, great skills. Don't get me wrong. But it is, as you say, Stephen, it's kind of cool to be able to say, I am differentiated in this one incredible, unusual, and in-demand way. But I want to switch gears here and talk about some of the technologies, because one of the things, Stephen, I remember you and I looking at, and it was just kind of jaw-dropping, to see some of the things that are being done on mainframes now. Running Linux on a mainframe, running OpenShift on a mainframe with container orchestration. As you mentioned, web applications running directly on the mainframe. Let's talk about that a little bit. What does the modern mainframe platform look like from a technology perspective?
So, I mean, you've got obviously the core of the hardware. The core of the hardware, you can run multiple operating systems there. You can run SLAES, you can run Debian, you can run ZOS, you can run VSE, you can run RHEL. There's a whole bunch of operating systems. So you've kind of got the traditional space, and then you've got the new space, if I kind of parse it out. The traditional space is still not the traditional space. I literally had a briefing this week. If I told you could run containerized Java applications in a mainframe operating system, that'd probably blow your mind, but that's reality. The IBM team has put ZOS container platform and embedded OpenShift, ported 1800 open source packages, things like Podman, and put those directly into the mainframe operating system. So even the traditional space isn't traditional in the lens it used to be. And then on the other side of the house, you've kind of got Linux. We've had Linux running on the mainframe now since 1999. So that's even not new. What's that, 23, 24 years maybe in production and sort of fully set up. Linux has only been going 30 years, so we're only 6 years kind of behind, if you will. So that's running SLES, that's running RHEL, that's running Ubuntu, that's running Debian, running Liberty, running a whole bunch of the sort of open source. And that's running things that you would expect. MongoDB, it's running containerized workloads. So I think from the underlying hardware capability, yes, we're running a lot of PL1, a lot of COBOL, a lot of Kix applications, a lot of DB2, a lot of the traditional stuff. That's still there, chugging away. But the ability to have this platform run some of the newest, most innovative AI workloads, there's accelerators built into the hardware to be able to run AI workloads inside a transaction. So if you're doing a credit card transaction on a mainframe, being able to do an account sort of fraud or risk management AI sort of decision process in the transaction, that type of stuff's possible. So I think, yes, you've always got to think about the traditional stuff that this platform's been doing for the last 60 years, and it does a great job of those, but it's also the other stuff that sits around it.
I hit on it earlier about latency. Latency has been, especially for app modernization, has been the killer. And one of the things that we've seen is a movement to move cloud workloads near the mainframe itself, but now to take it one step further and to say some of those particular workloads to run directly on the mainframe itself, you can't really get any lower latency than that as far as application performance is concerned. So I think that's the part of it that has been eye-opening to me, has been the fact that these technologies exist. As you mentioned, OpenShift. When I think OpenShift, I'm sure not thinking mainframe, but now after what I've seen as far as what's going to be happening at Share and the information that we're going to get from the various vendors, I have to change my mindset and realize that that's part of the equation now, and has been, as you mentioned, for quite some time, especially with the Linux, 24, 25 years being available to a mainframe. That's in the realm of the 30 years that it's been in existence for the enterprise for the most part. That's I in and of myself have to change my mindset when it comes to my approach when thinking about a mainframe. It's no longer just, as I mentioned, that hidden, I wouldn't say hidden, but the big black box sitting in the corner of the data center just chugging away that's been doing it for 25, 30 years. So I think in the end, app modernization, to me, I definitely do have to change my mindset when it comes to what the approach with the mainframe is nowadays, because latency is no longer an issue when you consider these particular technologies running directly on the iron itself.
A lot of students, young ones here at NIU, are involved in classes on data science and learning Python and that sort of thing. And that's become a hot topic in the department. And a lot of our new faculty, graduate faculty, the professors, they do a lot of that. But here's the thing. I bring to their attention that work can be done even better on the mainframe. They don't understand that there's a 32 terabyte data lake in which they can do their analysis on the mainframe. And they're floored by that. Even though they're using a supercomputer that we have available to us to do their work, their data analysis, they don't understand the amount of data that's stored on DASD units around the world that's been collecting for 60, 70 years And that data is out there ready to be analyzed as necessary without that much translation or transposition. And they really get amazed at it. They really do.
I mean, that kind of leads into some of the attendees that we've got coming to Mainframe Field Day at Share. You look at companies like Pop-Up Mainframe, not a household name. We've obviously got talking about people. We've got a couple more attendees and sort of big net household names that you would expect to be being involved. But you look at somebody like a Pop-Up Mainframe, that is all around mainframe developer and making that easy to get for dev teams to get onto the platform, being able to set up a quick development environment, set up these test regions, set up the ability for a developer with zero skills in mainframe backend to be able to jump on the platform, set something up quick, do the tests they need to do the work they need to do, bounce back to their day job. I think, John, you're going to really enjoy sort of Gary's presentation and the team at Pop-Up talking about what they're doing, because it's going to bring the intersection of kind of your world that you understand from a DevOps point of view to the mainframe. Pop-Up as a vendor sit right at that intersection. So it's going to be a fascinating discussion. And I think that's probably the piece that the delegates and the mix that we've got, Steve, with kind of new delegates to the mainframe platform, and then, you know, guys like Jeff and me and Derek and some of the others that we've got coming who are kind of mainframe guys.
Exactly. I think you're going to be really impressed by Pop-Up was a revelation when I heard about it. I was like, that is so cool. It's such a neat idea. And it really addresses one of those key challenges here, which is I need an environment to develop and to test, and I can have one while I need it. It's like on demand, which is, you know, how we use the cloud today. So before we go, Share is next week. We're going to be doing some presentations for Tech Field Day. We're also going to be doing some 6.5 recordings and broadcasts from Share. You'll catch those on the 6.5 channels as well as Techstrong channels. John, tell me about it from your perspective. What are you looking forward to at Share? What do you expect to see? And what do you think you might be excited by?
Well, I think in the end, we've already kind of discussed that. The mind shift that folks like myself have to take into consideration, that the mainframe is definitely part of the DevOps movement and app modernization movement. It's not just an old piece of rust sitting out there anymore. It's what's old is new again when it comes to a lot of folks, and changing that mindset over so that I can understand how app modernization can get even better with, as mentioned, 60, 70 years of data available at fingertips in some of these systems. That's going to be key for me moving forward, is getting a broader understanding of how that app development movement is going to embrace and ultimately succeed with the mainframe at the core.
Well, I look forward to meeting all the new people that are interested in hiring my graduates from the mainframe curriculum here, and also working with Cameron Say and getting companies to understand that we offer COBOL and Assembler to companies as they need them, and can hire us to teach a cohort whenever they need it. And also, I'm looking forward to being from Kansas City. I'm looking forward to good barbecue and some good Mexican food. And then working with you guys with Tech Field Day. So thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you so much for coming. And as someone who spends a lot of time in Texas, I have to say that Kansas City barbecue is better. Stephen, what are you going to look forward to there?
Well, I mean, the barbecue. Being a Brit, I've got no frame of reference, but I'm looking forward to the barbecue. I mean, for me, Share's just always a melting pot of the entire mainframe ecosystem. I've got some great friends in this community. It's also a chance for me as an analyst to sort of be on listen mode for the entire sort of trip and walk the booths in the expo hall, find out what's going on, what new features, functions, new technologies come into the platform. So I come away, I'll spend 3 days there, and just my brain will expand in real time at the event. And then I'm obviously looking forward to kicking off with our mainframe field day. So a great new format, bringing that to a new show. Super excited to be able to do that.
Excellent. Well, it's great to have the three of you joining us along with the other delegates. If you go to techfieldday.com, you can see a complete list. It's about half mainframe who's who, and about and some really exciting Tech Field Day folks. Some veterans like Gina and John, as well as a couple of new folks. So do check that out as well. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Tech Field Day podcast. If you enjoyed this discussion, please do subscribe. You'll find us on YouTube or in your favorite podcast application. And you don't want to miss an episode. We publish one every Tuesday. This podcast is brought to you by Tech Field Day, home of IT experts from across the enterprise, now part of the Futurum Group. For upcoming events and more episodes, head to techfieldday.com/podcast or visit us on Techstrong TV. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you next week.